Chapter 605. Release. When Shangtong was in Xianqing City, he wanted to kill him. In the immortal martial realm, he even acted against Yi Lingshuang and the others. Now that Shangtong was in his hands, how could he release him so easily? If that was the case, he wouldn't be mocking Shangtong but him, Qin Wentian. If he released Shangtong, would Shangtong be grateful to him? The eyes of the experts from Grand Shang narrowed as they stared at Qin Wentian. Right now, Qin Wentian was holding on to Shangtong. As long as he willed it, he would be able to kill Shangtong with a single thought. And from his earlier words, it was clear that he wanted Shangtong's life. The old man from the royal sacred sect also had an expression of rage on his face. Earlier, he was the one who told Shangtong to fight against Qin Wentian. The meaning behind his words was clear. If he was defeated, he would have to start all over again. No one would dare to touch his life. Although he didn't say the last sentence, everyone in the surroundings should have understood. Qin Wentian should have understood as well. If Qin Wentian didn't give him face by provoking Shangtong earlier, if he really killed Shangtong in front of him, not only would he not give him face, he would also be slapping the face of this elder of the royal sacred sect. How many years has it been since he met someone who dared to be so impudent in front of him? Those famous characters in the royal sacred region all shuddered like cicadas in winter before him. But now, a junior actually treated him like he was nothing. Not only that, he initially wanted to invite Shangtong to join his sect, becoming his disciple. The two disciples beside him stepped out as a violent aura gushed towards Qin Wentian. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they stared at Qin Wentian. As they icily stated, "Do you know what you're doing?" Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the people before him. Him wanting to deal with Shangtong actually had nothing to do with these people from the royal sacred region. Regardless of whether Shangtong was here or not, he would still act. "I can't let go of someone who wants my life," Qin Wentian said, looking at the old man. The old man's eyes were cold. He stared at Qin Wentian and spat out two words, "Release him." Only two words, arrogant and cold. He didn't care what grudges there were between Shangtong and Qin Wentian. He only knew that Qin Wentian had to release Shangtong in one piece, because he was here. Shangtong's countenance was incomparably malevolent. His eyes gleamed with a golden light as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian, wanting nothing more than to tear Qin Wentian's corpse into 1,000 pieces. His face was completely lost today. The gazes of the spectators all turned to Qin Wentian, waiting for his decision. Shangtong was a prince of Grand Shang Empire. Such a status was extraordinary. Not only that, there was still the pressure from an elder of the royal sacred sect. Would Qin Wentian really dare to act against Shangtong? Time seemed to have stopped as silence filled the air. Would Qin Wentian dare to kill him? The medicine sovereign also turned his gaze over, only to see Mo Qingqing turning her head to look at him. Her watery eyes were filled with a hint of hope. The person Qin Wentian was facing was an elder of the royal sacred region. If there was someone here who could suppress him, the medicine sovereign would be the only one. If not, nobody would be able to stand up for Qin Wentian. Seeing Qin Wentian facing such a situation, Mo Qingqing was naturally filled with worry. However, the medicine sovereign acted as though he didn't see her gaze. He was still smiling as he stared ahead, as though this matter had nothing to do with him. He also wanted to see if Qin Wentian would kill or not. The old man beside the medicine sovereign quietly stood there, as though he didn't exist. He hadn't spoken a single word. At this moment, his eyes were narrowed as he stared in the direction of Qin Wentian. He still didn't exude any aura, but for those who understood him, they would know that when he narrowed his eyes, it meant that he was in absolute danger. The two young men from the royal sacred sect saw that Qin Wentian was still holding on to Shangtong. They took another step forward as a towering killing intent gushed forth. It was as though as long as Qin Wentian didn't listen, they would kill Qin Wentian on the spot. Their master was actually being disregarded by a junior here. If the two of them still didn't know how to make use of this opportunity, they would truly be too foolish. If he loses even a strand of hair, you won't be able to bear the consequences. One of them coldly spoke. He didn't care about the fact that Qin Wentian was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. That had nothing to do with him. He was a disciple of the royal sacred sect. What he cared about was how his master viewed him. As for Qin Wentian, no matter how high his talent was, it was impossible for him to extend his hands into the royal sacred sect. Qin Wentian stared at the killing intent gushing forth from the two of them. He then glanced at the old man from the royal sacred sect. That old man was calm and emotionless, as though he already knew that Qin Wentian wouldn't dare to kill him. Nobody here would dare to defy his words. When facing an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect, nobody dared to not consider the consequences. Even Qin Wentian was the same. If he released Shangtong today, although this elder of the royal sacred sect would still feel hatred for him, he wouldn't make things difficult for him. After all, to him, Qin Wentian was only a junior. As for whether he would command the Grand Shang Empire to do something, that was something he didn't know. In any case, there was no need for him to give an order. Regardless of whether he released Shangtong or not, the hatred between them was already formed. The Grand Shang Empire would definitely deal with him. Back then when Shangtong wanted to kill him, the hatred between them had already been formed. It was just that at that time Shangtong was the one bullying him. Hence the Grand Shang Empire didn't care. But now things were different. He was the one dealing with Shangtong. No matter what the consequences are, today I want his life. Qin Wentian's voice rang out, filled with determination. After which, he blasted out with his palms as an incomparably terrifying attack blasted towards Shangtong. A look of despair flashed in Shangtong's eyes. He didn't expect that Qin Wentian would really dare to kill him. Boom! An explosive sound rang out, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble violently. The crowd only saw Shangtong's body plummeting downwards from the air as his head exploded. He was killed on the spot. A cold wind whistled through the air. The gazes of the crowd were all focused on Qin Wentian. The person who obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm actually dared to kill a prince of Grand Shang Empire in front of everyone. A prince of Grand Xia. His death concerned the prestige of a transcendent power in the royal sacred region. At the same time, he was also the son of the human emperor of Grand Xia. Qin Wentian really dared to kill him. All of these, Qin Wentian had naturally thought of them before. He thought of the Grand Shang Empire. He thought of this elder of the royal sacred sect. Even if he released Shangtong today, Shangtong would still target him relentlessly. Could it be that he would forever be in a passive position? He and his friends could only be bullied, but they couldn't retaliate? If he did this, Qin Wentian knew that he wouldn't be able to maintain a calm state of mind. If he didn't even dare to kill a prince of Grand Xia, how would he be able to chase after the footsteps of his parents in the future? How would he be able to stand above the immortals and devils? How would he be able to support the heavens and earth? That wasn't what he wanted. To kill Shangtong, no matter how great the pressure was, he would face it head-on. Those from the Grand Shang faction personally witnessed Qin Wentian killing Shangtong in front of their eyes. An incomparably fearsome tempest bore down on Qin Wentian. "You are courting death." The two youths from the royal sacred sect coldly spoke as they stepped out. However, at the same time, numerous beams of sword light flashed as sword chi hummed unceasingly. A few swords floated in front of Qin Wentian, humming as they clanged against each other. Behind Qin Wentian, a number of silhouettes appeared, exuding a fearsome sword intent that enveloped the two youths. These people who appeared were naturally from the battle sword sect. They remained silent. Even when the elder of the royal sacred sect wanted to headhunt Qin Wentian, they didn't say anything. If Qin Wentian had chosen to agree, they would have nothing to say. But now that Qin Wentian chose not to, these people still dared to act against Qin Wentian. How could the members of the battle sword sect not interfere? Scram! A voice as cold as sharp swords rang out. After which, the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign walked to the side of Qin Wentian as he stared at the silhouettes in front of him. "Do you all treat my battle sword sect as non-existent?" The battle sword sect also had a faction in the royal sacred sect. They naturally didn't have any reverence or fear towards those from the Grand Shang faction, let alone the fact that these people were headhunting Qin Wentian right in front of their faces. The experts from Grand Shang all stepped forward, with the elder of the royal sacred sect in the center. Both sides were in a state of confrontation. "He killed my junior in front of my eyes. Do you all want to interfere in this matter?" That elder stared at the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign as he spoke. What a joke. Earlier Qin Wentian's words were clearly heard by everyone here. Shang Tong wanted to kill him but failed. Now that he was killed by Qin Wentian instead, since your junior is useless, why don't you stand out? In front of so many people from the royal sacred region, you better leave some face for yourself. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign retorted. My disciple has already warned him. As long as a strand of hair is missing from Shang Tong's body, I will definitely punish him. That elder acted as though he didn't hear the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign's words. A towering and terrifying aura gushed forth from him, pressing down on Qin Wentian. His life is mine for sure, the elder of the royal sacred sect coldly stated, just like what Qin Wentian had said to Shang Tong. Qin Wentian obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, but today he wanted to kill him as well. I dare you to say one more sentence. A cold voice abruptly drifted over. In the next instant, the heavens and earth howled in rage as a bone-chilling killing intent swept through the entire space. Everyone who felt this cold wind couldn't help but shiver. This coldness seemed to be able to seep into one's bones, causing one's soul to tremble in fear. This aura was even more terrifying compared to the aura of the elder of the royal sacred sect. Not only that, it was directly targeted at the elder of the royal sacred sect. There seemed to be two terrifying auras clashing against each other, causing rumbling sounds to echo out in the air. The eyes of the elder of the royal sacred sect gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. The coldness in the air unceasingly gushed over, actually suppressing his aura and enveloping everyone from Grand Shang, causing expressions of terror to appear on the faces of those from the royal sacred sect as they turned their gazes towards a certain direction. They stared in the direction of the medicine sovereign. However, the source of that powerful coldness wasn't the medicine sovereign, but the silhouette beside the medicine sovereign. That silhouette narrowed his eyes as he stepped out, causing an even more violent chi flow to churn the space around him, madly blasting towards those from Grand Shang. At this instant, other than the elder of the royal sacred sect, the others involuntarily retreated as their countenances turned pale. You dare to repeat that sentence again? That old man's narrowed eyes flickered with a terrifying sense of danger as he stared at the elder of the royal sacred sect. The killing intent radiating from him was as though as long as the elder of the royal sacred sect dared to say another word, he would suffer the same fate as Shang Tong. Chapter 606. Arrogant, tyrannical. Everyone initially thought that the one who acted would be the medicine sovereign. Who would have thought that the old man beside the medicine sovereign would actually step out and be so unexcelled in this world? Why don't you repeat that sentence one more time? His ice-cold words, the sharpness of his killing intent churned the wind and clouds, permeating through all openings. These words of his weren't spoken to ordinary people. It was spoken to an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect. In the entire royal sacred region, he was a character that stood at the very peak. But when that old man spoke, no one dared to doubt him. Because that incomparably terrifying killing intent was so strong that it was terrifying. It was as though as long as that old man repeated that sentence one more time, he would really kill that elder-level character of the royal sacred sect on the spot. That elder-level character of the royal sacred sect had an extremely ugly expression on his face. What status did he have? He came here today to spectate, yet he didn't expect to be humiliated so many times over. First he was rejected by a junior, and after that, that junior killed Shang Tong right in front of his eyes. And after that, when he said that he wanted Qin Wentian's life for sure, someone actually stood out and told him, why don't you repeat that sentence one more time? If ordinary people dared to say such words to him, he would have long since killed them. But the person before him seemed to be a friend of the medicine sovereign, and the aura radiating from him seemed to be able to suppress him. This indicated that the strength of this person was higher than him. But given his status, how could he be frightened? Not to mention this was done in front of so many people. This trip to the immortal martial realm was a grand event in the royal sacred region. News of what happened here would soon circulate throughout the entire royal sacred region. Are you threatening this seat? That elder from the royal sacred region coldly replied. His aura similarly howled in rage, transforming into terrifying dark clouds that gushed towards the old man. Boom! The old man took another step out when he heard his words. As his step landed, a beam of killing intent flashed and instantly, the entire space around him transformed into a constellation. Incomparably resplendent beams of killing intent arced through the air, capable of severing even space itself. Threatening? You are not qualified yet. The old man faintly spoke, after which he coldly spat out, "All of you scram for me." As the sound of his voice faded, the beams of killing intent unceasingly streaked through the air. The experts from Grand Shang Empire all retreated unceasingly, swiftly retreating to a faraway location. Very swiftly, they retreated to a very far distance. Only that elder from the royal sacred sect remained, facing the old man beside the medicine sovereign. It wasn't that the others didn't want to fight shoulder to shoulder with him. It was just that they didn't dare to do so. The disparity in strength between them was too obvious. If they didn't retreat, those streams of energy would be able to sever their bodies. Nobody wanted to die, they could only retreat. Even the two disciples of that elder had retreated far away, their faces filled with terror. Evidently, they didn't expect that there would be such a powerful existence standing up for Qin Wentian. Who is he? The faces of everyone were filled with shock as they stared at the old man. The medicine sovereign of the Medicine Sovereign Valley had always been extremely mysterious. He could be considered one of the most ancient characters in the royal sacred region, having lived for an unknown number of years. One could very well imagine how long his lifespan was. Even the medicine sovereign didn't know much about him, let alone the friends of the medicine sovereign. But since this old man could stand shoulder to shoulder with the medicine sovereign and had such terrifying strength, he should at the very least be a character on the same level as the medicine sovereign. How dare you? The elder from the royal sacred sect was completely enraged. The lines on his face were no longer as gentle as before, replaced by a malevolent, baleful aura. The royal sacred sect was the hegemonic power of the royal sacred region, ruling over countless territories. No matter where they went, they would always be lofty, disdainfully looking down on everyone. And he was an elder of the royal sacred sect. Usually, even the sect leaders and emperors of ancient countries would have to treat him with respect. But now, not only did the old man threaten him, he even told him to scram. In front of so many people, he was actually threatened and told to scram. Given his pride, how could he endure this? So what if the strength of the old man was above him? VZ. Astral light flashed. The entire space around him seemed to have changed. A constellation appeared as black-colored flames filled the skies, floating behind him. Despite the vast distance between them, Qin Wentian could still clearly feel the overwhelming destructive might radiating from it. Retreat. Countless people retreated, including Qin Wentian and the others. Only existences like the medicine sovereign, the old man and the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign could still calmly stand at their original locations, staring at the black-colored flames that caused the skies to change color. Over there seemed to be a terrifying flame beast bearing its fangs, ready to pounce out at any moment. Do you know who you are talking to? That old man from the royal sacred sect stared at the old man, his voice so cold that it could pierce one's bones. A divine weapon appeared in his body. It was a divine truncheon with terrifying diagrams engraved on it. At the instant the truncheon appeared, the black-colored flames grew even more terrifying. The incomparably ferocious beast let out terrifying roars as though it could rush out at any moment. Since you don't wish to scram, just leave your life behind. The old man's eyes were still narrowed as he calmly spoke. There was no fluctuation in his voice, as though he was speaking of an extremely ordinary matter. Telling an elder of the royal sacred sect to leave his life behind. How audacious was this? Just the thought of it was sufficient to cause people to feel how crazy this was. In terms of status, an elder of the royal sacred sect was definitely not inferior to the human emperors of ancient countries or sect leaders of supreme sections. In terms of strength, they might be inferior to some, but they weren't too far off. Wanting to kill such a character, the word audacious was no longer sufficient to describe it. Not only that, did he have the strength to kill such an existence? Although they had no way to sense the exact strength of this elder, he was definitely at the upper 3 levels of celestial phenomenon. In addition to the might of that truncheon, how terrifying was his strength? Die! That elder of the royal sacred sect was completely enraged. With a thunderous roar, he stabbed out with his truncheon. Instantly boundless flames rained down from the heavens, transforming into incomparably ferocious beasts, made of black flames that lunged towards his opponent, wanting to devour him. Boom! The other party seemed to be unaware of this as he slowly walked forward. As his step descended, his entire body was enveloped by boundless streams of light that directly slashed apart the incoming attacks. A dazzling stream of light erupted from his body, blazing and dazzling like the scorching sun. Under the cover of his opponent's constellation, he walked out step by step. With every step he took, the light grew even more intense, until his entire body transformed into a beam of light, a beam of killing intent. After which, the crowd felt as though their eyes were about to be blinded by the piercing light. It was as though they couldn't see anything at all. There were several experts who forcefully endured the piercing pain and opened their eyes. They only saw beams of light that were as hot as the sun unceasingly flashing through the air, as though they were truly capable of slicing apart the void. When the light dissipated, the destructive energy still permeated the entire space. The two of them didn't move at all, still standing at their original location. It was as though nothing had happened between them at all. Has this battle ended? Many had bewildered looks on their faces. In fact, many of them didn't even see the ending of the battle earlier. The two of them simply stood there, as though time itself had stopped flowing. It was extremely bizarre. However, at this moment, the hearts of many people violently trembled, twitched, and seemed to stop breathing. Their hearts were beating wildly, and their eyes were wide open, revealing expressions of shock. It was as if they had seen something they didn't dare to believe. The constellation hadn't dissipated yet. That elder of the royal sacred sect stood there. Strands of light actually appeared on his body, intersecting with each other. These strands of light grew more and more numerous, as though there was no end to them. After which, that elder of the royal sacred sect disintegrated before the eyes of the crowd, vanishing just like that. He vanished like smoke, completely vanishing, transforming into light. After that, the constellation also dissipated. Everything seemed to have calmed down. The silence in the air was so terrifying that it was terrifying. Yet the hearts of the crowd couldn't calm down at all. This scene was something that some of them would never be able to forget for the rest of their lives. Those strands of light that intersected the elder's body, were all scars. In that short instant, the countless scars caused the elder to disintegrate into nothingness. This caused many to feel a sense of terror that originated from the depths of their souls. It was too terrifying. That narrowed old man's eyes returned to normal, no longer narrowing. That terrifying sense of danger vanished from him, but the shock it left behind in the hearts of the crowd was still unable to be erased. Never would they have thought that after the immortal martial realm ended, they would still be able to witness such a shocking battle that shook the entire royal sacred region. Although this battle was very short, it would definitely be circulated around the immortal martial realm together with the ranking monument. An elder of the royal sacred sect, an absolute hegemon of the royal sacred sect, was killed in an instant. The impact of this battle wouldn't be any weaker compared to the ranking of the immortal martial realm. Not only that, there was a commonality between the two, and that was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, killed. This time, the one killed wasn't the prince of Grand Shang Empire, but an elder of the royal sacred sect. The crowd was dumbfounded. Those from Grand Shang were all trembling. Even now, they didn't dare to believe that because of Shang Tong, an elder of the royal sacred sect had died. As for the two disciples of the elder from the royal sacred sect, they gulped down their saliva as they stared at that old man. They wanted to say something, yet they discovered that they didn't dare to make any sound. This old man truly had no qualms about killing their master. Not to mention the others. Even Qin Wentian himself was dumbfounded, as he looked at the unknown old man in astonishment. This was too crazy. Why would this old man do such a crazy thing? An elder of the royal sacred sect had died because of him. Chapter 607. Such an ending was something Qin Wentian didn't expect. An elder-level character of the royal sacred sect had fallen. He didn't know what attitude the royal sacred sect would have when dealing with this matter. Before this, he had already predicted that killing Shang Tong would definitely incur the wrath of Grand Shang. The experts from the battle sword sect, Yi Country, and the medicine sovereign would definitely act for him. As for the revenge of Grand Shang in the future, Qin Wentian naturally had already thought of this. However, if he released Shangtong just because he was afraid of revenge, he wouldn't be able to do it. But now, the person implicated in this matter wasn't merely a prince, an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect, and was even an extremely powerful weaponsmith. This instantly caused him to feel a heavy pressure bearing down on him. However, he didn't blame the old man. After all, this matter was caused by him and the old man acted for him, Qin Wentian. In that case, no matter what he would encounter in the future, he would have to accept it. However, there was a trace of curiosity in his heart. Why would this old man act so crazily over this matter? He had no way to understand. Could it be that an elder-level character of the royal sacred sect wasn't even worth a mention in his eyes? Many thanks for Senior's help. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto the old man as he bowed slightly. This caused a look of admiration to flash in the eyes of the medicine sovereign. If it was an ordinary person encountering such a matter, they would definitely try to distance themselves from it. But since Qin Wentian thanked the old man, it meant that he, Qin Wentian, had a part to play in the death of that elder of the royal sacred sect. Only to see the old man staring at Qin Wentian as his palms trembled slightly. However, such a minute movement naturally went unnoticed by others. That deep gaze of his actually caused Qin Wentian to be unable to see through it. For an instant, Qin Wentian even had a feeling that the gaze of the old man was filled with gentleness and warmth. But naturally, it was only for an instant. Very swiftly, the old man's gaze turned as calm as stagnant water, with no fluctuations at all as he lightly nodded his head. This caused Qin Wentian to speculate that the other party might have acted because of the medicine sovereign. At this moment, the gaze of that old man shifted onto the group from Grand Shang. His brows twitched as a faint killing intent flickered within. Momentarily, the bodies of those from Grand Shang trembled as they decisively turned and fled. This old man even dared to kill an elder of the royal sacred sect. If he wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as lifting a finger. It was just that this old man disdained to act. How would they dare to remain here? Right now they only had a single thought in their minds. They had to report this matter to the royal sacred sect. The death of an elder should be sufficient to shake the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect. As the absolute hegemon of the royal sacred region, they couldn't tolerate this matter. That old man and Qin Wentian both had to pay with their lives. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over in a certain direction only to see a similarly cold beam of light shooting towards him. It was none other than Di Shi. He initially planned to kill Qin Wentian on the spot after exiting the immortal martial realm. So what if you are the top ranker of the immortal martial realm? If you die, so what if your talent is high? But now, Di Shi knew that it was impossible for him to kill Qin Wentian. How could Qin Wentian not have thoughts of killing Di Shi? Both of them had the same thoughts. It was just that Di Shi's strength was many times stronger compared to Shangtong. His cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and he had comprehended several innate techniques from the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian was confident that he wouldn't be weaker than Shangtong. But if he wanted to kill Di Shi by jumping levels, he couldn't be sure. After all, he didn't know how strong Di Shi was when he could unleash his full strength. In addition, when Qin Wentian killed Shangtong earlier, he had already borrowed the power of others, offending the Grand Shang faction and even the royal sacred sect. This wasn't something that belonged to him personally. Now that he wanted to borrow the power of the medicine sovereign to deal with the Supreme D clan, it was simply too overboard. It was better for the grudge between him and Di Shi to be settled by themselves. How about setting a time? Qin Wentian's gaze was sharp, penetrating through space as he stared in the direction of Di Shi. As the sound of his voice faded, another wave of commotion arose. This fellow had just killed Shangtong, and this sentence of his was undoubtedly a challenge to the era-suppressing heavens chosen Di Shi. Nobody would be so foolish as to think that Qin Wentian would set a time to drink and chat with Di Shi. This sentence was akin to a declaration of war. Would Di Shi accept the challenge? 3 months later, on the sacred battle platform. At that time, everyone in the royal sacred region can head there to witness the battle of the top ranker of my immortal martial realm. Di Shi coldly spoke, directly accepting the challenge. Time 3 months later. Location: the sacred battle platform of the royal sacred region. The sacred battle platform. Seems like there's going to be a good show to watch. The hearts of the spectators mused. The name of the sacred battle platform resounded throughout the entire royal sacred region. It was the peak battle platform in the royal sacred region. If one wanted to fight on the sacred battle platform, one must have an outstanding battle record and extraordinary fame. Over there, one could often witness the rise of some geniuses. Fine. Qin Wentian only replied with a single word. Agreed. 3 months later, Qin Wentian would be able to stabilize his cultivation base, as well as absorb all his gains from the immortal martial realm. The sacred battle platform would be the place where Di Shi would die. The killing intent in Di Shi's eyes sharpened. He swept his gaze over the crowd as he tyrannically spoke. 3 months later, I, Di Shi, shall invite all the geniuses at the Heavenly Dipper realm to gather on the sacred battle platform. At that time, we shall see who is unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. His voice reverberated through the air, indicating his ambition. He wanted to be unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Right now, Di Shi's cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and in addition to the fact that he was one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, he could indeed contend for the title of the strongest among the Heavenly Dipper realm. Di Shi wants to contend for the title of the strongest in Heavenly Dipper, while the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, wants to challenge for the title of era-suppressing geniuses. Not only that, the location is set to be on the sacred battle platform. How exciting! Many mused in their hearts. The events that happened in the immortal martial realm today were sufficient to cause great waves of commotion in the royal sacred region. 3 months later, I'll be waiting for you to send yourself to death. Di Shi flicked his sleeves and departed. The experts from the Supreme D clan glanced at Qin Wentian. Although they wanted to kill Qin Wentian to avenge Diyu, it was clear that they couldn't do so. They could only leave. 3 months later, let's hope Di Shi wins and slays Qin Wentian. If not, if they allowed Qin Wentian to mature, he might really become a great enemy in the future. Junior brother Qin, let's return to the battle sword sect. Duan Han walked up and spoke to Qin Wentian. The implications of the commotion today were too great, and Qin Wentian would surely be at the heart of it all. Only by returning to the battle sword sect would he be safe. As long as he returned to the battle sword sect, no matter how great the commotion was, the sect would help Qin Wentian to endure it, even if the pressure came from the royal sacred sect. In addition, the battle sword sect could help Qin Wentian inquire about the opinions of the upper echelons of the royal sacred sect on this matter. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He was a disciple of the battle sword sect. He would naturally return to the battle sword sect. His gaze turned in the direction of Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing walked up and pulled Qin Wentian's hand before turning her head to look at the medicine sovereign. That soul-stirring countenance of hers caused the medicine sovereign to be unable to bear to separate the two of them. Return to the medicine sovereign valley with me. The medicine sovereign's beard fluttered as he glared at Mo Qingqing. This lass had forgotten her master the moment she found a lover. No. Mo Qingqing stubbornly stared at the medicine sovereign as she lightly shook her head. This was the first time she said the word no to the medicine sovereign. It wasn't that Mo Qingqing wanted to disobey the medicine sovereign. It was just that after losing her memories, it wasn't easy for her to reunite with Qin Wentian. And after that, they parted ways in the immortal martial realm. How could she bear to part with him again? In addition, the commotion had already started. She naturally hoped to stay by Qin Wentian's side. Qin Wentian could feel the warmth of Mo Qingqing's dainty hand. He also tightened his grip, feeling warmth in his heart. You want to follow him to the battle sword sect? He's now the top ranker of the immortal martial realm with a cultivation base at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. Don't you want to raise your own strength? Even if you are proficient in alchemy, if your cultivation base isn't up to par, your pill concoction abilities would still be limited. The medicine sovereign's eyes widened as he spoke in a depressed manner. Naturally, he was reminding Mo Qingqing not to forget her cultivation or the gap between her and Qin Wentian would be widened. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a look of contemplation. She naturally didn't want to be a burden and hoped that she would be able to help Qin Wentian. However, she still couldn't bear to let go of Qin Wentian's hand. I will naturally release you 3 months later. The medicine sovereign stared at the pitiful expression on his beautiful disciple's face. He couldn't help but to feel helpless. This lass was truly incurable. Emo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light. She glanced at Qin Wentian only to see Qin Wentian pulling on her hand as he nodded his head. Qingqing, during these 3 months, I will also be in closed-door seclusion. You should follow Senior Medicine Sovereign back to the Medicine Sovereign Valley. Okay. Emo Qingqing nodded. Upon seeing this scene, the Medicine Sovereign was so angered that his beard flew about wildly. He glared fiercely at Qin Wentian. There was no justice in this world. He didn't listen to his master's words. Yet the words of his lover were so effective. Let's go. The Medicine Sovereign speechlessly spoke. Emo Qingqing reluctantly let go of Qin Wentian's hand, after which, she walked to the side of the Medicine Sovereign and soared through the air. Emo Qingqing, who was in the air, turned her head back and stared at Qin Wentian. Their gazes intersected, filled with longing. Abruptly, Emo Qingqing smiled sweetly, causing the hearts of countless to tremble. Before they parted, she still wanted to leave behind a smile for Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian, come back with me. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign walked over. He naturally wanted to ensure Qin Wentian's safety, and Qin Wentian nodded his head. He stared at Fan Lu and the others. Senior, I wish to bring my friends along as well. Sure, all of you can go to the Battle Sword Sect as guests. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign naturally wouldn't be so unreasonable. Now that Qin Wentian's status was extraordinary, how could he stop him from bringing his friends to the Battle Sword Sect as guests? Wentian. A gentle voice drifted over. Qin Wentian glanced at Lin Xian, only to see her beautiful eyes filled with a smile. After we part this time, sir, don't forget about Xian. We shall meet again on the Sacred Battle platform 3 months later. After speaking, Lin Xian's graceful steps shifted as she left together with those from the Celestial Maiden sect. This caused countless people to cast envious gazes at Qin Wentian. How unreasonable was this? Emo Qingqing's love for him had already touched their hearts. Yet Lin Xian was still trying to provoke their fragile hearts. Let's go. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign and the other experts from the Battle Sword Sect waved their hands as sword chi rose up into the air. Everyone stepped onto the sword beams, and after which, they all soared through the air and departed. Countless gazes stared at the departing silhouette of the young man. But in their hearts, they were all thinking that the immortal martial realm was the place where Qin Wentian rose to fame. In the future, he would surely be the most outstanding talent in the Royal Sacred Region. How would his story be written in the future? Numerous silhouettes soared through the air. The 8 era-suppressing geniuses all departed as well. The immortal martial realm finally quieted down. Only that gigantic monument with so many names engraved on it remained there, unchanged for 10 years. As the crowd departed, Qin Wentian's name began to circulate throughout the entire Royal Sacred Region. Chapter 608. Outside the Battle Sword Sect, sword chi whistled through the air. Many people in the sect inclined their heads, only to see a group of silhouettes riding on flying swords, flying over. These were none other than the group that had just returned from the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian stepped on the whistling sword chi, stopping in the air above the ancient peak of the Battle Sword Sect. Over there a snow-white silhouette flew over, akin to a bolt of white lightning, leaping into Qin Wentian's embrace. Its snow-white body unceasingly nuzzled against Qin Wentian's. Little rascal, long time no see. Fan Lu stared at Little Rascal as he stretched out his hand and flicked Little Rascal's forehead. Little Rascal inclined his head, glaring at Fan Lu. Opening his mouth, he spat out a few words. Damn. Fatty. Black lines instantly appeared on Fan Li's face. This little rascal actually knew how to speak? Its immature voice was filled with a hint of cuteness, causing Qin Wentian to involuntarily burst out laughing. Boss, you must have taught him this, right? Fan Lu was speechless. He harshly rapped Little Rascal's forehead. Little Rascal bared its fangs and brandished its claws. Fatty, you are courting death. Qin Wentian laughed, carrying Little Rascal in his arms as he walked forward. In front of him, a beautiful silhouette could be seen quietly standing there. Her slender figure, as well as her breathtaking countenance, attracted the gazes of many. Qin Wentian walked to the side of the beautiful silhouette, smiling warmly as he stared at her. Qing'er glanced at Qin Wentian as her melodious voice rang out. I came out today to walk around. I won't feel so bored if I walk around more. Qin Wentian stared at the maiden in front of him. She was still a woman of few words. She lied. Little rascal's head popped out from Qin Wentian's embrace as he stared at Qing. She came here every day? What a sin. Fan Lu slapped his forehead. This was too much of a blow. Qin Wentian blinked as he stared at Qing only to see that Qing countenance didn't change at all. She coldly glanced at Little Rascal before sending out a slap. Little Rascal hurriedly retreated into Qin Wentian's embrace, causing Qing's slap to miss. Upon seeing Qin Wentian staring at her, a strange light flickered in the calm eyes of Qi as she replied, Little Rascal loves to talk nonsense. Yes. Qin Wentian nodded, still looking into Qing's eyes. I'm going back. Qing's countenance changed slightly. After speaking, she immediately turned and departed at an extremely fast speed. Staring at her beautiful back view, Qin Wentian lowered his head and stared at Little Rascal in his embrace as he gently asked, What else do you know? Here, there were people chasing after her, but they were all beaten away by her. Little Rascal mumbled, causing Qin Wentian to perspire. Who would be so audacious as to chase after Qing? There's one more person, she can't win against him. That person looks at her every day. Can you chase him away? Little Rascal stared at Qin Wentian with its big eyes, causing Qin Wentian to be extremely happy. He rubbed Little Rascal's head and laughed. This is the first time I found you so adorable. I will nourish you later. I want to evolve. Little Rascal spoke in a baby-like voice. The nourishment he was referring to was naturally the power of Qin Wentian's bloodline. Little Rascal could be said to have been raised by Qin Wentian's blood. Wentian, I will go and meet with senior brother Ling Tian first. You should go back and have a good rest. At this moment, the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign who was in the air spoke to Qin Wentian. He naturally had to inform Sword Sovereign Ling Tian and the others about what happened in the immortal martial realm. As for the matter regarding Qin Wentian, it would still require the upper echelons of the Battle Sword sect to meet with each other. Right, many thanks, Sword Sovereign. Qin Wentian nodded his head in thanks. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereign nodded his head as the group of them soared through the air. Ji Feishua also went to report to his master, Sword Sovereign Ling Tian. Since they had already arrived at the Battle Sword sect, the crowd soon dispersed. Yi Lingshuang and Duan Han helped to arrange the lodgings for Fan Lu and the others. Their lodgings were all near Qin Wentian's lodgings. The group of them sat together and chatted for a few hours before the sky darkened. Qin Wentian returned to his lodgings and started to organize his spoils from the immortal martial realm. For this trip to the immortal martial realm, he could be considered to be the one with the greatest rewards. He needed time to consolidate his foundations. The Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art, such a powerful cultivation art, had to be cultivated step by step. Not only that, according to his thoughts, he should use the Fiend God Body Refinement Art as a supplement to it, allowing him to unleash even greater power. However, if he wanted to cultivate the Fiend God Body Refinement Art, he would need a large amount of heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures to aid his cultivation. This was also the difficulty in cultivating it. Other than this, he also needed to slowly comprehend the tyrannical innate techniques he obtained from the stone monuments. For example, the golden rock art, star seizing art, illusionary shadow art, etc. Not only that, during combat, these powerful innate techniques all required a terrifying amount of astral energy to be unleashed. The stronger the attack, the more astral energy it would consume. It was extremely difficult for someone at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper to use so many powerful techniques. Luckily, he had 4 Yuanfu, which gave him an advantage when compared to ordinary people. In the night sky, the astral light was exceptionally resplendent, cascading down unceasingly from the heavens, cascading down onto the place where Qin Wentian was seated, causing the entire space to be bathed in the starlight. Qin Wentian sat there for a total of 7 days. After 7 days, when he opened his eyes, the air was filled with traces of coldness. Early in the morning, the mountain rampart was covered in white mist. The scenery was exceptionally beautiful. The gentle sound of a flute drifted into his ears, containing traces of a melodious melody. Qin Wentian quietly listened to it. The melody was graceful and contained hints of heartfelt emotions within. It's that person, he's here again. How annoying. Little Rascal ran to the side of Qin Wentian, grabbing onto Qin Wentian's arm. Qin Wentian instantly understood who Little Rascal was referring to. Most probably it was referring to the person Qing Er couldn't defeat. Let's go take a look. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, and soon after, he saw the person who was playing the flute. This person was clad in white and was standing on top of a gigantic boulder on the mountain wall. He was playing the flute in the direction of Qing Er's residence, exuding a carefree and unrestrained aura. Qing Er stood on the roof. Her countenance was filled with coldness, as though she was unhappy. The cultivation base of this white-robed figure was extremely high, at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper, and was also a disciple of the Battle Sword sect. No wonder even Qing Er couldn't defeat him. After all, Qing Er's current cultivation base was only at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, and she had just stepped into this realm not too long ago. Qing Er. Qin Wentian's silhouette appeared beside Qing Er. Qing Er glanced at him before turning her gaze onto the silhouette on the mountain rampart, her countenance turning even colder. Sir, don't you think it's very ungentlemanly of you to harass others like this? Qin Wentian stared at the white-robed figure as he spoke in a clear voice. His voice contained the humming of swords within, causing ear-piercing sounds to echo in the air. The melody of the flute was forcibly interrupted, and the white-robed figure turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian as he emotionlessly spoke. Sincerity can split open metal and stone. What does my actions have to do with you? She's my friend, so it naturally has something to do with me. Please don't come here again. Qin Wentian continued. Just a friend? In that case, what qualifications do you have to obstruct me from wooing junior sister Qing Er? The words of this person didn't hold back at all. It was clear that he wanted to woo Qing Er. Laughter rang out as several silhouettes appeared on the mountain rampart. One of the female disciples giggled. Senior brother Han, junior sister Qing Er is so beautiful. All those who wooed her have been beaten up by her. I'm afraid your chances are slim, but I'll still support you. Junior sister Qing Er is as mesmerizing as a celestial maiden. How many people wouldn't be moved by her? I actually hope that senior brother Han can succeed in wooing junior sister Qing Er to our Lone Mountain faction. Another person spoke as he glanced at Qin Wentian. This person was none other than Qin Wentian, the one whose name had recently caused a commotion in the Battle Sword sect, the one who obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. All of them wanted to take a look at him as well. Wentian, these people are all disciples from the Lone Mountain Sword Sovereign's faction. It was unknown when Yi Lingshuang had arrived, but it was unknown when she spoke to Qin Wentian. The Battle Sword sect doesn't forbid disciples from fighting each other, right? Qin Wentian asked. He naturally knew that Qing Er liked peace and quiet. Back then she chose this place because there would be fewer people disturbing her. However, these people didn't have the slightest bit of etiquette and were causing a ruckus here. Although Qing Er didn't say it clearly, one could tell that she was extremely uncomfortable just by looking at her cold countenance. Naturally, it's fine as long as you know your limits. The Battle Sword sect encourages competition. The elders won't interfere. Yi Lingshuang nodded. If that's the case, that's good. Qin Wentian nodded lightly as he turned to Qing Er. Can I help you chase them away? Qing Er started. She stared at Qin Wentian as her eyes flickered. After which, she nodded her head lightly, sure. Qin Wentian flicked his sleeves as he stepped out, instantly standing in front of the experts on the mountain rampart. Staring at that white-robed figure, he commanded, "Scram!" Senior brother Han held his flute in his hands as he emotionlessly glanced at Qin Wentian. Right now in the Battle Sword sect, Qin Wentian's name was known by everyone. He returned with the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, causing huge waves of commotion in the Battle Sword sect. How could he not know? This man killed Shangtong and challenged Disher to a duel. An elder of the Royal Sacred Sect had died because of him. Senior brother Han. He's preparing to use you to establish his might. That female from earlier giggled as she stared at Qin Wentian. Senior brother Han, although your cultivation base is high, this man's name can shake the entire Royal Sacred region. If we fight, our fellow disciples won't say that you are bullying the weak. Another voice drifted over. Qin Wentian swept his gaze over to the experts on the mountain rampart. There were a total of 5 of them. Other than senior brother Han, there were 3 at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper and 1 at the 7th level. Golden light flashed as astral energy enveloped Qin Wentian, causing him to resemble a golden rock with golden wings. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared at the experts before him. He then coldly spoke, "All of you can come at me together." As the sound of his voice faded, the wings on Qin Wentian's back flapped as he floated higher and higher into the air. The light radiating from him grew more and more resplendent, causing the 5 silhouettes on the stone rampart to stiffen. Their battle intent gushing forth in torrents. From afar, the perception of several disciples of the battle sword sect gushed over, paying close attention to this battle. Qing Er still stood on the rooftop, her cold eyes staring at Qin Wentian's back. Her beautiful eyes were calm and tranquil. Chapter 609. Although Qin Wentian was alone, the spectators from the battle sword sect didn't feel that the 5 of them had the advantage. Everyone was very clear on the weight of the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. There were already rumors circulating in the outside world that Qin Wentian's name had to be added to the list of era-suppressing geniuses. However, the majority of the spectators were still waiting for the battle to take place on the sacred battle platform. If Qin Wentian defeated Dishur, everything would naturally fall into place. The spectators only saw a golden glow radiating from Qin Wentian, enveloping this entire space. The wings on his back had already solidified, transforming into the wings of a true great rock. Qin Wentian's entire body was enveloped by the glow of a golden-winged great rock, as though he was about to transform into a true great rock. The golden rock art and fiend transformation art he cultivated in the ancient monument were used simultaneously. Naturally, he would be able to produce many transformations. VZ. A raging wind gusted by as a golden bolt of lightning arced through the air, shooting towards the mountain rampart ahead with an astonishing speed. At the same time, a terrifying surge of bloodline power gushed forth as demonic qi towered up into the skies. Trap him! Upon seeing Qin Wentian's lightning-fast speed, one of the spectators commanded in a low voice. Momentarily, an 8th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereign released his astral soul and astral nova. An incomparably gigantic ancient vine blotted out the skies as it shot towards Qin Wentian, wanting to bind the entire space. At the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, the power of an astral nova was already extremely powerful. The radius of the vine's envelopment was extremely vast. It could easily bind people within. Such a control-type astral nova was extremely dangerous. Once one was bound by it, they would only be waiting for death. Voila! A crisp sound rang out. The ancient vine was directly sliced apart by the golden light, breaking apart inch by inch, causing the countenance of the spectator to drastically change. The slicing power of those golden wings was definitely sufficient to directly slice apart his astral nova. It was too sharp. Such an attack power caused him to feel fear in his heart. Boom! A palm imprint actually transformed into a gigantic ancient mountain, smashing downwards towards Qin Wentian. The golden rock didn't pause at all. The ancient mountain shattered, and in the blink of an eye, Qin Wentian dashed towards one of the experts on the mountain rampart. This expert had a cultivation base at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and it seemed as though nobody's attacks could restrict his movements. The countenance of that person drastically changed, after which, he only saw Qin Wentian blasting out with his palms. A resplendent beam of runic light flashed as it smashed downwards. With a deafening boom, that person was smashed into the mountain, his body completely submerged within. Qin Wentian wasn't even on the same level, even if his cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. The countenances of the others stiffened when they saw this scene. With such combat prowess, 8th level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns were nothing more than trash in front of him. He could crush them with a single strike. How could they even fight? Brilliant light illuminated the skies as numerous resplendent astral souls and astral novas erupted forth. Evidently, all of them were prepared to go all out. But at this instant, a boundless golden light radiated from Qin Wentian. In their vision, there were actually several silhouettes of Qin Wentian. All of them had a pair of golden wings on their backs. In their vision, there was only the incomparably arrogant Qin Wentian. Boom! The thousands of silhouettes all unleashed their attacks at the same instant, blasting outwards in all directions, wanting to destroy everything. The remaining 4 people all felt a wave of palm imprints slamming towards them. Their countenances drastically changed as they frenziedly defended. Rumbling sounds rang out as a few deep pits appeared on the mountain rampart. 3 of them were directly smashed into the mountain rampart as they coughed out blood. Only the person who was pursuing Ching-er managed to block this attack. His countenance turned ashen. The sound of wind whistled by, only to see Qin Wentian floating in front of him. The golden wings on his back were flapping wildly in the air, and with every flap, a raging wind would kick up, causing sand and gravel to fly about. That pair of incomparably arrogant demonic eyes stared at him, containing a terrifying coldness within. He quietly floated in the air, yet he was like a lofty sovereign king. Scram! From today onwards, you are not allowed to appear before Ching-er. Qin Wentian coldly spat out. The coldness in his voice permeated the air, as though he wasn't only speaking to the person in front of him. If it wasn't for the sake of protecting him, Ching-er wouldn't even have come to the battle sword sect. In the past, she had always been by his side, yet she didn't allow him to see her. That maiden was like a snow lotus on a mountain of ice. She was always so quiet, causing people to not have the heart to disturb her. Yet these people actually dared to harass Ching-er. How could he be so angry? The countenance of the white-robed man turned ashen as he coldly snorted, after which he turned and departed. The other 4 also crawled out from the pit in the mountain rampart. All of them were injured to varying degrees. They all left with their tails between their legs, no longer having the carefree demeanor they had when they spoke earlier. This battle was truly too embarrassing. They were simply trampled on. The spectators from the battle sword sect retracted their perception, yet they were all sighing in their hearts. Even a 9th-level Heavenly Dipper expert didn't dare to fight against Qin Wentian head-on. With a single word scram, Qin Wentian directly turned and left. Evidently, he knew the disparity between them. The combat prowess that Qin Wentian casually displayed was truly too shocking. The burial ground of the immortal martial realm was truly a place where geniuses of the younger generation were buried. After Qin Wentian walked out from the immortal martial realm, he seemed to have undergone a magnificent transformation. Right now, he was using the fiend transformation art in addition to the power of his bloodline. The aura he exuded had already reached the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. Suppressing 8th level Heavenly Dipper experts wasn't a problem at all, and in addition to the wild explosive power he exuded, unless it was a demon-level genius at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper, they would only be able to retreat in fear. Di Shi had already declared that he wanted to fight for the title of Unrivaled in Heavenly Dipper. Since Qin Wentian challenged Di Shi, how could he possibly be weak? Qin Wentian retracted his aura and returned to the side of Ching-er. However, he only saw that Ching-er's countenance was as cold as ever. She merely cast a glance at him before returning to her own residence. This scene caused Qin Wentian to be stunned. It seemed like there was something wrong with Ching-er. Ching-er, what's wrong? Qin Wentian followed after her. Ching-er didn't reply and continued walking quietly. She came to a pavilion in the courtyard and stared at the misty clouds in the distance. It was unknown what she was thinking. Qin Wentian could faintly sense that Ching-er's mood was somewhat low. He didn't say anything and simply stood quietly by her side. All along, it had always been Ching-er who had been silently protecting him. Now that his strength had grown much stronger, he naturally felt extremely happy in his heart to be able to fight for Ching-er's sake. The cool breeze of the morning blew over, ruffling Ching-er's hair. She lowered her head as she spoke in a melodious voice. I've already completed the task Master wanted me to do. In the future, you don't need me anymore. Her melodious and calm voice drifted into the depths of Qin Wentian's heart, causing him to feel a piercing pain in his heart. In the future, you don't need me anymore. This simple sentence actually caused Qin Wentian to feel a trace of pain in his heart. Was Ching-er really going to leave? That's right. The reason why Ching-er stayed by his side was because she obeyed Fairy Qingmei's words. Throughout these years, although Ching-er rarely appeared, whenever he needed help the most, the first person to appear would always be this cold maiden. She always didn't like to speak, to the extent that people would forget about her existence. However, how could Qin Wentian ignore her? It had been 10 years ever since he was a youth in Chu. She had always been by his side, quietly protecting him. Up until now, Qin Wentian had long since gotten used to her being by his side, to the extent that he had forgotten that there would be a day when she would leave. Since she had completed the task Fairy Qingmei entrusted to her, what other reason would she have to stay? The two of them fell silent. Qin Wentian stared into the distance as the cold wind gusted on his body. He couldn't help but to laugh at himself. This wind is really cold. Qing'er's dainty hands grabbed onto the corner of her robes before loosening her grip. Turning back, she stared at Qin Wentian. She was still as beautiful as ever. That ice-cold countenance of hers was flawless. She stared at Qin Wentian, only to see Qin Wentian squeezing out a smile at her before shifting his gaze away. He didn't dare to look at her face. Qing'er stared at Qin Wentian, and after a few moments she stated, "I won't leave." Qin Wentian's eyes brightened. He walked to the side of Qing'er as the light in his eyes returned. "Really? This place is actually quite suitable for cultivation." Qing'er nodded her head lightly, after which she turned and walked towards her room. Staring at her departing back, a radiant smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he heaved a sigh of relief. Qing'er seemed to be the princess of a major power. If she left, Qin Wentian wasn't sure if he would still be able to see her again in this lifetime. How could he bear to leave her behind? Who? Exhaling deeply, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he returned to his residence, only to see Lin Shuai and Duan Han here. "Senior brother Lin." Qin Wentian smiled at Lin Shuai. "Seeing that you were at junior sister Qing'er's place, I didn't want to disturb you. Master wanted me to pass a message to you. Let's go to the courtyard to talk." Lin Shuai spoke to Qin Wentian. "Right?" Qin Wentian nodded. Since Sword Sovereign Ling Tian wanted Lin Shuai to look for him, there must be an extremely important matter. In the courtyard, Lin Shuai and Qin Wentian sat down. Lin Shuai spoke to Qin Wentian, junior brother Qin. That elder who died in the immortal martial realm had an extremely high status in the Grand Shang faction. Because he wasn't an ordinary elder, he was proficient in weaponsmithing and his status was ranked at the top of the Grand Shang faction. His death caused the Grand Shang faction in the Royal Sacred Sect to be enraged. They wanted our Battle Sword Sect to hand you over, and even wanted to target the Medicine Sovereign. Great waves appeared in Qin Wentian's heart. Back then, he had already predicted that the death of that elder would cause a huge commotion. The internal affairs of the Royal Sacred Sect are extremely complicated. The competition between the various factions is extremely intense, but the faction with the most authority is none other than the core faction. They directly listen to the commands of the Sacred Emperor, and the matter regarding the Medicine Sovereign was suppressed by the core faction. Hence, all the pressure was shifted onto you. The core faction naturally wouldn't be willing to hand the Medicine Sovereign over. For the sake of you, the Royal Sacred Sect caused a huge commotion. For the sake of you, the Royal Sacred Sect caused a huge commotion. Lin Shuai bitterly smiled as he continued. And what's even worse is that the other factions aren't too friendly towards you. For example, the Violet Thunder Sect, Great Earth Sect, etc. However, for the sake of this, our ancestor, who is also the previous sect leader of the Battle Sword Sect, spoke out. If there's anyone who dares to bully the weak to deal with you, it would be equivalent to declaring war against the Battle Sword faction. The weight of this sentence is extremely heavy. At the same time, he also sent a message back to the Royal Sacred Sect. Do you want to join the Royal Sacred Sect now? If you do so, it would be much safer. Lin Shuai asked. Chapter 610. When Qin Wentian heard Lin Shuai's words, he couldn't help but feel gratitude towards the ancestor of the Battle Sword Sect whom he had never met before. One could very well imagine how powerful the ancestor's words were when he said, "If there's anyone bullying the weak to deal with you, it's equivalent to declaring war on the Battle Sword Sect." This meant that at the very least in public, any celestial phenomenon ascendants who wanted to act against him would have to think twice before doing so. As for dealing with him in the dark, Qin Wentian didn't doubt it at all. This was a given. Leaving aside that elder of the Royal Sacred Sect, the death of Shang Tong from the Grand Shang Empire was already sufficient for the Grand Shang Empire to assassinate him. The elders of the Battle Sword Sect as well as Lin Shuai clearly understood this. Hence they asked him if he was willing to join the Royal Sacred Sect. If he chose to join the Royal Sacred Sect now, it would undoubtedly be the best method to avoid being targeted. However, if he chose to join the Royal Sacred Sect like this, Qin Wentian was filled with reluctance in his heart. It was like he was running away from something. Also, maybe because of the death of that elder, the Royal Sacred Sect didn't send him an invitation. Although Qin Wentian didn't care about face at the very least, it would show that the Royal Sacred Sect valued him. If not, if the Royal Sacred Sect didn't value him enough and felt that he was responsible for the death of that elder, what was the point of him joining the Royal Sacred Sect then? Why didn't he choose the immortal martial realm? After all, the Royal Sacred Sect wasn't part of the Battle Sword faction. The Battle Sword sect was only a single faction. Senior Lin Shuai, I have no intentions of joining the Royal Sacred Sect yet, Qin Wentian calmly spoke, his words causing a strange light to flicker in Lin Shuai's eyes. Qin Wentian didn't say that he didn't intend to join temporarily, but rather, he didn't intend to join yet. This sentence contained another layer of meaning. It was hard to say if he, Qin Wentian, would be willing to join the Royal Sacred Sect or not. So what if they were a transcendent power of the Royal Sacred Region? Qin Wentian had a father who could kill so many that even devils and immortals would weep. He knew that even if he joined the Royal Sacred Sect, it would only be a temporary period and he would have to leave sooner or later. Since this was the case, if the Royal Sacred Sect didn't value him, what was he going to join for? Hence it was hard to say if he was willing or not. The Royal Sacred Sect was challenging him, but wasn't he challenging the Royal Sacred Sect as well? After being stunned for a moment, Lin Shuai nodded and patted Qin Wentian on the shoulder. You have courage. Senior brother supports you. During this period of time you should focus on your cultivation. I will bring your words to master and ask for his opinion. Thank you, senior brother Lin. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded. Lin Shuai then left. After Lin Shuai left, Qin Wentian didn't immediately enter closed-door seclusion. Instead, he took out his spatial brush and started inscribing new spatial scrolls. Although right now his name shook the entire Royal Sacred Region, there were still many dangers awaiting him. Naturally, he had to make some preparations. At the same time, he also needed to inscribe some spatial scrolls for Qin Lu and the others to use. This time around, Qin Wentian inscribed quite a number of spatial scrolls for Fan Lu and the others. After which, he entered closed-door seclusion again. Cultivating the innate techniques and cultivation arts he obtained in the immortal martial realm. Although 3 months of time was extremely short, he would still do his best to increase his strength by a few notches. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had already passed since the end of the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian, who was in the Battle Sword sect, was still living a peaceful life. But in the Royal Sacred Region, the frequency of his name appearing was the highest, even surpassing Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. During this period of time, many things happened in the Royal Sacred Region. For example, countless powers extended olive branches to Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. This was especially so for Gu Lufeng. After all, he was still alone and had never joined any power before. Naturally, the various powers wanted to recruit him. And the one that caused the most commotion was undoubtedly the invitation from the Royal Sacred Sect. As the top 3 rankers of the immortal martial realm, they had no connection with any of the major powers in the Royal Sacred Sect. Hence, there were quite a few waves of experts from the Royal Sacred Sect who wanted to invite them over. Finally, when the core faction extended an invitation to Hua Taishu finally agreed to join the Royal Sacred Sect. This matter caused a huge commotion. Hua Taishu of the Great Emptiness Sect joined the core faction of the Royal Sacred Sect, and he even became the personal disciple of a character with an extremely high status. His status was many times higher compared to Junyu back then. One could very well imagine what kind of commotion it would cause if this news was circulated back to Grand Xia. Most probably, the Hua faction would definitely be in an uproar. The genius of the transcendent power Hua clan of the Moon Continent, the top ranker of the heavenly fate rankings back then, Hua Taishu had finally achieved an unprecedented achievement in the history of the Hua clan. Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu were ranked equally on the immortal martial realm monument. In addition, Gu Liufeng's fame far surpassed Hua Taishu. Since Hua Taishu received an invitation from the core faction, Gu Lufeng, who didn't join any of the major powers, naturally received the same invitation as well. However, Gu Lufeng didn't agree nor reject. He only said that he needed some time to consider, and the Royal Sacred Sect wouldn't force him. However, there was a rumor circulating around the Royal Sacred Region that there were people who saw Gu Lufeng in the immortal martial city. He seemed to be in the immortal martial realm, and the reason was unknown. Only after a long period of time did people start to feel regret. That was actually the last time Gu Lufeng appeared in the royal sacred region. From then on, Gu Lufeng completely disappeared, his whereabouts unknown. It was unknown how many outstanding female cultivators felt sadness in their hearts. The calm lake severs the moon. Yi shoots the 9 heavens, the incomparably handsome white-robed Gu Lufeng. Could it be that they would never see him again? The other top rankers of the immortal martial realm also received invitations. Compared to these people, the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, was completely ignored. However, everyone could understand that it wasn't that the attractiveness of Qin Wentian couldn't be compared to Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. It was because his situation was unique. Firstly, as a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, he had already severed all thoughts of joining the major powers in the royal sacred region other than the royal sacred sect. The only power that had the qualifications to invite Qin Wentian was the power that invited Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu, the core faction of the royal sacred region. However, an elder of the royal sacred sect died because of Qin Wentian. There were many people in the royal sacred sect who wanted Qin Wentian's life. Under such a unique circumstance, it wasn't strange that Qin Wentian didn't receive an invitation. The core faction of the royal sacred sect also didn't directly issue an order to punish Qin Wentian. This indicated that the core faction had already adopted a laissez-faire attitude. In the Battle Sword sect, when the news of Hua Taishu and Gu Lufeng was transmitted to Qin Wentian's ears, his gaze turned to the horizons as great waves rose in his heart. He knew that as to why Gu Lufeng appeared in the immortal martial city, it was because he had already made his choice. He wanted to join a power of the immortal martial realm and leave the royal sacred region. As for Hua Taishu, he chose the royal sacred sect and not the immortal martial realm. Maybe his clan in Granxia had influenced his decision. From the conversation he had with Hua Taishu back then, Qin Wentian understood that Hua Taishu couldn't let go of his clan. Hence, he chose to temporarily stay behind. These two absolute geniuses chose different paths. In that case, where would Qin Wentian's path be? Wentian, Hua Taishu has already made his choice. What about you? What do you plan to do? Ouyang Quangxing stood beside Qin Wentian as he asked in a low voice. I'll head to the sacred battle platform to complete the arranged battle. After that, I'll make a trip back to Granxia to complete the matters I've yet to complete. After that, I'll make a trip back to my hometown and hold a wedding ceremony with Qingcheng. At that time, maybe I'll make a decision. Qin Wentian mumbled. A warm smile could be seen on his face. He and Qingcheng had already consummated their marriage. How could he not give Qingcheng a status and hold a wedding ceremony? He wanted to set the location of the wedding in their hometown, the Chu country. It was the place where they met and knew each other. It's about time for me to return. Jiang Ting is still waiting for me. I owe her. Ouyang Quangxing laughed. Upon thinking of Jiang Ting, the resolute lines on his face softened. Time passes so quickly. Qin Wentian sighed. In the blink of an eye, they had both experienced the vicissitudes of life and death, the vicissitudes of life. He could still remember the first time they met in the Celestial Lake Palace. That's right, time passes so quickly. Who would have thought that the young man from the Celestial Lake Palace back then would already have such accomplishments today? Back then you traversed 10,000 miles and transformed into a demon, destroying the Pill Emperor Hall with a single sword strike. Now your name has already shaken the entire royal sacred region. Do you have any confidence in returning to Granxia? Ouyang Quangxing smiled as he stared at Qin Wentian. If the demon sword is unleashed, who in Granxia would be able to stand against it? Qin Wentian laughed. However, I wonder if the demon sword that's currently embedded in the Pill Emperor Hall is willing to be used by me. Naturally, even if he didn't use the demon sword, he could still transform into a great rock and dominate Granxia. The demon sword might be a demon, but with you as its master, it wouldn't be a humiliation to it. Ouyang Quangxing laughed uproariously. Wentian, when I marry Jiang Ting, it won't be a grand affair. But you have to be the witness for our marriage. Ouyang Quangxing's words had a deeper meaning to them. In truth, back then when the Ouyang ancestor broke the promise between him and Qin Wentian because of Junyu, Ouyang Quangxing already had a knot between him and the Ouyang aristocrat clan. After exiting the royal tomb, He returned to the Ouyang aristocrat clan, and the Ouyang ancestor no longer passed the inheritance rights to him. If not, how could the marriage between the Ouyang aristocrat clan and the Jiang clan not be a grand affair? There was only one reason. This pair of lovers of the past were no longer blessed by the Ouyang aristocrat clan. Sure, I will. Qin Wentian seemed to have understood Ouyang Guangxing's meaning. A smile appeared on his face as he silently mused in his heart that the wedding between Ouyang Guangxing and Jiang Ting would definitely be blessed. Let's go for a stroll. Qin Wentian spoke as he slowly walked out. Where are we going? Ouyang Guangxing followed after him. To the grass hut, comprehending the swords. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, he soared into the air. An instant later, outside the grass hut, on the ancient mountain peak, the bodies of many trembled violently as they stared at the young man Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian is going to comprehend the swords for the second time. This news instantly circulated around. Right now, there wasn't a single person in the battle sword sect who didn't know that Qin Wentian had broken the record for comprehending the swords for the first time, comprehending 14 sword strikes. After obtaining the first rank in the immortal martial realm, how could Qin Wentian not cause a commotion when he entered the grass hut again? Chapter 6:11. On the ancient peak, more and more people gathered. All of them were staring at the silhouette of the young man walking towards the grass hut. The first time Qin Wentian came to the battle sword sect, he had comprehended 14 sword strikes, breaking the record of the grass hut. After so many days, he once again arrived at the grass hut. The 15 sword strikes of the grass hut. Nobody under celestial phenomenon can comprehend it. Can Qin Wentian comprehend it? Many mused in their hearts. Qin Wentian had already comprehended 14 sword strikes. Right now, he had to start from the 15th sword strike. However, the 15th sword strike had the reputation of being impossible for anyone under celestial phenomenon to comprehend it. They wondered if Qin Wentian would be able to bring any surprises to them. Lin Shui arrived. He stared at the junior apprentice brother he had personally welcomed into the battle sword sect. This was the most outstanding junior apprentice brother he had met ever since he entered the sect. He wondered what surprises Qin Wentian would bring to him this time around. Yi Lingshuang arrived. Her attitude had already undergone a huge change compared to the first time they met. Back then, she couldn't stand the sight of Qin Wentian, feeling that he was extremely lecherous. Even little rascal dared to assault her sensitive spots. But this time around, she only had anticipation in her heart. Senior sister Lu at this moment, a beautiful maiden appeared on the mountain peak opposite the grass hut. It was none other than Lu Bingyu. Her clear eyes stared at the silhouette before her. Bingyu. It was unknown when Ji Feishue appeared beside Lu Bingyu. Lu Bingyu glanced at him. She discovered that after returning from the immortal martial realm, her attitude towards Ji Feishue was completely different. There was no longer any trace of competition or admiration. There was only calmness. Such a transformation happened soundlessly. Feishue, you have to work hard. Junior sister Lu's cultivation base has already broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper after her closed-door seclusion. Lin Shui glanced at the two beside him and smiled. His words caused Ji Feishue's eyes to flicker as he cast a deep glance at Lu Bingyu. When Lu Bingyu was in Wu Mu's World Monument, she was one of the few who could comprehend the energy of the stone rampart. Her outstanding talent was slowly being displayed. Li Hanyu also arrived. The expression she had when she stared at Qin Wentian was incomparably complicated. Back then she had once looked down on him, but now he couldn't even be bothered to look her in the eye. Or maybe, it could be said that Qin Wentian had never looked her in the eye before. If not, why would he directly slap her in the face? Back then in the immortal martial realm, she had cursed Qin Wentian with hatred in her heart. Yet, she discovered that Qin Wentian had walked all the way to the end, becoming the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. Such a feeling other than herself, no one else could understand it. Other than the disciples of the battle sword sect, how many celestial phenomenon ascendants from the battle sword sect were spying on them? Qin Wentian stood in the grass hut, causing a huge commotion in the battle sword sect. Lu Bingyu had never experienced such treatment before. Neither had Ji Feishue. In the past 100 years, only Qin Wentian had ever experienced such treatment. At this moment, Qin Wentian had already started to comprehend the first 14 sword strikes. He had already comprehended the first 14 sword strikes. He only needed to comprehend it once more. Comprehending a sword strike was a kind of comprehension, a kind of understanding. Since he had already comprehended it once, the second time was naturally much easier. He directly walked up to the 15th sword strike. Once again he saw the scene from back then. In front of Qin Wentian, there was a mountain rampart. This mountain rampart depicted a violent ancient demon that wanted to devour the heavens and destroy the earth. It was incomparably frenzied, as though it wanted to destroy everything. However, all of this was dissipated by a single sword strike. That sword landed in the middle of the evil dragon and demonic phoenix, instantly disintegrating the evil dragon, turning it into dust. Everything was destroyed. I could sense the existence of martial wills in the first 14 sword strikes. Even if it was a fusion of martial wills, I still managed to comprehend it in the end. However, only this sword strike. Is it really like what I thought it was previously, a fusion of martial wills at a deeper level? Qin Wentian mused. If it was truly a fusion of mandates at a deeper level, it would be extremely difficult for him to comprehend which mandates were fused together. There was a high possibility that he would return in failure, unable to comprehend the 15th sword strike. However, this time around Qin Wentian had a strange feeling. This sword strike was extremely pure, so pure that it was merely a single type of energy. It wasn't a fusion of many different types of mandates. Naturally, there was also a possibility that it was a fusion of a completely new type of energy. Given his current strength, he wouldn't be able to sense it. Qin Wentian closed his eyes. It was as though the image on the rampart was directly imprinted into his mind, as he repeated that sword strike over and over again. If one doesn't step into celestial phenomenon, they won't be able to comprehend the 15th sword strike. Qin Wentian mused. Celestial phenomenon. What was a celestial phenomenon? In the celestial phenomenon realm, one's comprehension of mandates had to reach another level, surpassing the perfection boundary of the second level. This level was known as the true intent of a mandate. Truth. It referred to true comprehension. For example, the first level he comprehended was force, and the second level was void shockwave. But was there only these two transformations for his mandate of force? Clearly, there was still a third and fourth transformation. For example, gravity, the omnipresent force. Only by truly comprehending the mandate of force would one be able to step past this level and comprehend the true intent of the mandate of force. This step was already exceedingly difficult. It was unknown how many cultivators had tried to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. Many of them spent their entire lives trying to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. But this was only one of the conditions to step into the celestial phenomenon realm. If one truly wanted to step into celestial phenomenon, they still had to convert their astral novas back into their astral souls, using their astral souls to form a constellation. For this step, one had to take the previous step as the foundation. Only by comprehending the true intent of a mandate would one be able to comprehend their own constellation. Constellations were all-encompassing, containing a myriad of transformations. At the same cultivation level, if one of them had an extraordinary constellation, he or she could easily suppress 10 or even 20 ordinary constellations. In fact, he or she might even be able to insta-kill them. This also meant that there were many who had no way to step into the celestial phenomenon realm in their entire lives. But when you were feeling complacent after stepping past that barrier, you would discover to your sorrow that the disparity between cultivators at the same level could be magnified to the point of despair. The more Qin Wentian understood, the more he understood how terrifying the disparity between cultivation levels was. Back then, if it wasn't for him transforming into a great rock and wielding the demon sword, the celestial phenomenon ascendants of the Pill Emperor Hall would be able to squash him to death as easily as squashing an ant. And precisely because of this, the Pill Emperor Hall missed the best opportunity to squash him to death, thinking that they could kill him anytime they wanted. That sword strike, could it be that the true intent of a mandate was infused into the sword? When Qin Wentian thought of the celestial phenomenon realm, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. If one didn't step into celestial phenomenon, it was impossible for one to comprehend the 15th sword strike. If the 15th sword strike was a true intent, heavenly dipper sovereigns naturally wouldn't be able to see through the essence of this sword strike. As Qin Wentian thought of this, he started to comprehend in this direction. He didn't think about whether this sword strike was a fusion of mandates or not. Closing his eyes tightly, that sword strike repeated itself thousands of times in his mind. Finally, he felt that his perception of the sword had slowed down. He could see more clearly, and he could see more clearly. Time flowed by unknowingly. Qin Wentian suddenly understood that for those who could complete the entire trial of comprehending the sword, how high would their comprehension abilities be? How could they not become a hero of their generation? A day later, the silhouettes on the ancient peak were still there. They stared at Qin Wentian, yet Qin Wentian still didn't move. Could it be that there was no way to comprehend the 15th sword strike after all? If one didn't step into celestial phenomenon, they wouldn't be able to comprehend the 15th sword strike. Was there really no way to break this iron rule? Many people sighed in their hearts. Seems like a miracle wouldn't happen. Qin Wentian was still immersed in his thoughts. In his mind, that sword strike grew even clearer. He could sense the power contained within that destructive sword strike. That speed, that lacerating might, that omnipresent power. If he had to find a mandate that was compatible with him, then it should be wind. The mandate of wind couldn't be described as a will, but rather the true intent of the mandate of wind. This was because there were many different types of mandates contained within. The speed of the wind, the lacerating might of the wind, the misty wind, the omnipresence of the wind. Understood. Qin Wentian opened his eyes. After which, he placed his palms on the mountain rampart in front of him as his perception gushed forth. Instantly a dazzling beam of sword light tore through the heavens and earth, humming unceasingly. At this moment above the grass hut, sword chi gushed forth, ravaging the heavens and earth. The 15th sword strike comprehended. He only used a single day. Awesome. Lin Shui had a smile on his face. This junior brother of his had truly brought him a pleasant surprise. He was able to comprehend this sword strike when he was only at the heavenly dipper realm. In that case, in the eyes of others, celestial phenomenon was a heavenly mote. Maybe to Qin Wentian it was only a matter of time. Since he could comprehend this sword strike, it meant that one day, he would be able to comprehend it himself. Wentian is truly too outstanding. Yilingxuang's beautiful eyes flashed with joy. This foster brother of hers might even surpass her father in the future. How good would it be if he was her biological younger brother? If that was the case, her father wouldn't need to worry about who would inherit his legacy. The eyes of Lu Bingyu and Ji Feishua also flickered with astonishment. The disciples of the battle sword sect all exclaimed in shock. However, this was only the beginning. The second diagram was the same as the first diagram. It was so similar that it almost made people think that it was the same painting. But ultimately, Qin Wentian used 12 hours to comprehend it. The energy contained within this sword strike was the power of space. Although the process was similar, at the instant of destruction, the might it unleashed was far more powerful. Next, for the 17th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 8 hours. For the 18th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 6 hours. For the 19th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 4 hours. For the 20th sword strike, Qin Wentian used 2 hours. For the 21st sword strike, Qin Wentian used an hour. After 2 days, he comprehended another 7 sword strikes, from the 15th to the 21st. The people on the ancient mountain peak were all dumbstruck. They stared blankly at Qin Wentian advancing towards the direction of the grass hut. He had already completed the 22nd sword strike. This was already a goal that the vast majority of the members of the battle sword sect had no way of accomplishing. For those below the celestial phenomenon realm, Qin Wentian had already arrived at this place. How difficult was the 22nd sword strike? Could the person who broke the record of the grass hut still be able to continue forward? Nobody knew the answer, but the gazes of the entire battle sword sect were all focused on the grass hut. Chapter 6:12. The 22nd Sword Strike. Qin Wentian stood in front of the mountain rampart. This time around, other than the terrifying gigantic demonic beasts, there was also a vast starry sky. It was as though this was a constellation. Constellation. These demonic beasts are all under the constellation. Qin Wentian stared at the demonic beasts that were wreaking havoc in the air. Yet they were all enveloped by a constellation. There was no need to doubt that only heavenly dipper sovereigns could summon such a constellation. A constellation was the sign of someone stepping into the celestial phenomenon realm. Those gigantic demonic beasts howled in frenzy. At this moment, within the constellation, numerous sharp swords arced through the air, raining down from the heavens. This was a constellation formed from the foundation of swords. These sharp swords arced through the air, resembling streams of light as a destructive energy ravaged the entire space. The gigantic demonic beasts that were enveloped by the constellation all screamed in agony as fresh blood flowed from their wounds. All of them were annihilated by this terrifying constellation. This constellation is so powerful. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. He had heard that there were great disparities in the strength of constellations, but he had no idea what grade the constellation in front of him was at. This destructive energy seems to be the energy of lightning. However, there's no obvious hint of it, only the radiance of light that exudes a destructive energy. Qin Wentian mused. He had heard that the structure of a constellation could be divided into many different types. A constellation formed from a single true intent infused into a martial soul was the simplest type of constellation. The constellation in front of him right now was formed from swords. This indicated that the martial soul should be a sword. However, there were some extremely powerful constellations that were formed from the fusion of 2 or even 3 different types of true intents. Such constellations would be extremely powerful, especially for those with supreme comprehension abilities. They would be able to comprehend a mutated version of the constellation. For example, even if 2 different people use 2 different types of true intents to comprehend their constellations, the constellations they formed in the end would still be different, resulting in the disparity in power. The constellation in front of him didn't seem to be a constellation formed from a single true intent of lightning. Could there be a true intent of sword hidden within? Qin Wentian thought to himself. After all, sword intent was also proficient in destructive prowess, so it was not surprising that it could create such an effect. But even if Qin Wentian had guessed it, unless he could truly comprehend the formation of this constellation, there was no way for him to comprehend it. Not only that, his cultivation base was only at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. Although his 2nd level of mandate was already at the perfection boundary when he exited the immortal martial realm, he had yet to comprehend a true intent of his mandate. Wanting to comprehend a fusion of true intents was simply too difficult. The first 7 sword strikes only contained a single martial intent, so it was still possible to comprehend it. However, the difficulty of the 22nd sword had risen to another level. Most likely it would be extremely difficult to comprehend. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and comprehended quietly. During this period, he reached out to touch the mountain wall several times, but he failed to comprehend the sword each time. Obviously, his perception was wrong. Very quickly a day passed. Qin Wentian faintly sensed that this sword strike contained a true intent of wind. If the true intents of wind and lightning were to fuse together, he didn't know what effect it would produce. There was a possibility that it would be able to create such a scene of destruction. Maybe he was right. But even if he was right, without truly comprehending the formation of this constellation, he still wouldn't be able to comprehend this sword strike. I haven't even comprehended a true intent of my mandate, yet I want to comprehend a constellation formed from a fusion of true intents? Seems like I've overestimated myself. Qin Wentian calmly smiled. He wasn't disappointed. Seems like this 22nd sword strike was truly impossible to comprehend before he comprehended a true intent of his mandate. As he thought of this, Qin Wentian smiled and gave up. He turned and descended the steps of the grass hut, causing those on the mountain peak to heave a sigh of relief. The 15th sword strike of the grass hut was already known to only be comprehended by those who were at the celestial phenomenon realm. Qin Wentian had already comprehended the 22nd sword strike. If he continued any further, it would actually be abnormal. Unless there was a soul of a celestial phenomenon ascendant in Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered, arriving at the top of the mountain peak. Lin Shui smiled at him. Why? Not continuing. It's just a waste of time. Let's comprehend it next time. Qin Wentian smiled. Ma'am, it's already very impressive that you could comprehend the 7th sword strike that contained a true intent of your mandate. I believe that it won't take too long for you to comprehend a true intent of your mandate. When your cultivation base reaches that level, you would be able to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm. Lin Shui spoke to Qin Wentian. Although you can use some treasures to break through to the celestial phenomenon realm, you mustn't depend on external sources. It's best to rely on your own comprehension. Also, try your best to condense a better constellation. Don't be greedy, you have to focus on perfection. Understood. Qin Wentian nodded his head. He knew that when condensing a constellation, some powerful cultivators might condense a few different types of constellations. But normally speaking, they would only use the most powerful constellation for combat. Lin Shuai was worried that Qin Wentian would go astray and hoped that Qin Wentian would focus on condensing more powerful constellations instead of relying on quantity. When are you preparing to move out? Lin Shuai asked again, naturally referring to the sacred battle platform. Let's move out now, there's not much time left. Let's head to the sacred royal city first. I'm also very interested in that place. Qin Wentian spoke. The sacred battle platform was located in the sacred royal city. No matter what, Qin Wentian had to make a trip there. The vast and powerful sacred royal city was considered a sacred ground in the entire royal sacred region. He headed there a few days earlier because he had some things he needed to do. Okay, I will inform my master and get him to send some people over. Lin Shuai spoke. No need. I'm proficient in disguise techniques. Qin Wentian transmitted his voice to Lin Shuai. Lin Shuai started before nodding his head, replying to Qin Wentian, okay, I will get the elders of the battle sword sect in the royal sacred sect to wait for you at the sacred battle platform. I will return to inform them first. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded. After which, he left the mountain peak and gathered Ouyang Fanla and the others, telling them that he planned to head to the sacred royal city alone. Right, I'm preparing to return to Granxia first. Ouyang Quangxing spoke. He planned to look for Jiang Ting. I wish to roam around the southern region of the royal sacred region. After that, I will meet up with you guys in Granxia. Fanlu smiled. I'm returning to Granxia. Yunmingyi replied in a low voice. Right, seems like we have to temporarily part ways. After returning to Granxia, remember to return to the unmatched realm. We will meet up there. Qin Zheng smiled. Other than Mu Feng, these people were all disciples of the unmatched realm. Qin Wentian nodded his head lightly. Now that he had made enemies in the royal sacred region, he naturally couldn't act as brazenly as before. Also, they all had their own matters to attend to. It was inevitable that they would part ways. Right, Granxia, let's meet again. Qin Wentian and his companions hugged each other. When Yunmingyi returned, he noticed her beautiful eyes staring at him. He smiled and walked up, giving her a hug as well, causing Yunmingyi's eyes to flicker. Little rascal, let's go. Qin Wentian called out. Instantly, a white silhouette dashed over. A man and a demonic beast walked out of the battle sword sect. The sacred royal city, the sacred city of the royal sacred region. This ancient city had an ancient history, exuding an aura of majesty. It was unknown how many people would enter and exit this ancient city every day. The atmosphere here was extremely strong. Even a stone thrown on the streets could hit a celestial phenomenon ascendant. Hence, it was best not to antagonize the young masters and young mistresses here, or you wouldn't be able to do so. The sacred royal city contained the absolute hegemon of the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect. It also had the most famous battle arena, the sacred battle platform, as well as the largest trading market. The 9 great sects of the royal sacred region, the 7 great clans, the 2 empires, as well as the many ancient empires, all had residences in the sacred royal city. They would send their juniors here to broaden their horizons, enroll in the famous academies in the sacred royal city, or send them to the royal sacred sect. At this moment, Qin Wentian stepped into this ancient city that was home to many of the most ancient cities in the royal sacred region. He was casually clad in a simple white robe. The contours of his face were clear, and one could faintly see traces of handsomeness. He appeared to be around 30 years of age, and evidently this was his appearance after changing his appearance. I'm so tired. A slightly immature voice drifted out from beneath Qin Wentian. The one who spoke was a demonic beast. This demonic beast was exceptionally adorable. It was a little white tiger. The runes on its body didn't exude the aura of a king, and the way it shook its head made it seem like it was drunk. This demonic beast was naturally none other than Little Rascal. Qin Wentian wasn't the only one on Little Rascal's back. There was also a maiden with a peerless figure, dressed in green with a veil and a conical bamboo hat. Although one couldn't see her countenance clearly, just from her demeanor and figure, it was enough to cause one's imagination to run wild. Maybe this was a peak-level beauty. When Qin Wentian left the battle sword sect, Qing'er was actually willing to follow him. Although Qin Wentian was somewhat taken aback, he was naturally more than happy to do so. You good for nothing, we are so light yet you still say you're tired? We raised you for nothing. Qin Wentian rapped Little Rascal on its head. You too. Villains colluding together to bully me. Little Rascal whimpered, his words causing many in the surroundings to turn their gazes over in bewilderment. Little Rascal is so amusing. A maiden laughed. What are you looking at? I've never seen such an adorable demonic beast before. Little Rascal spoke in a babyish voice, causing Qin Wentian's face to be filled with black lines. He discovered that Little Rascal learning how to speak wasn't a joyous matter at all. Indeed, I've never seen him before. Little Rascal, what are you doing here in the sacred royal city? That maiden laughed. I'm here to suppress the geniuses and shake the world with my name. Little Rascal tyrannically spoke, causing the people in the surroundings to snicker. Everywhere he passed by, he would definitely become the target of attention. Qin Wentian's face turned black as he stared at Little Rascal's bragging. He already regretted bringing him along. Initially, he wanted to keep a low profile, but who would have thought that he would be tricked by Little Rascal? Can you stop? Qin Wentian gave Little Rascal a ruthless slap on the face as he walked on the streets. Sir, if you don't like it, just give it to me. At this moment, a voice drifted over. After which, Qin Wentian saw a gigantic Yuan meteor stone appearing in front of him. This Yuan meteor stone was filled with an incomparably dense astral energy. Not only that, it wasn't polished to a standard size, it was completely natural. Qin Wentian turned his head, only to see a young man pointing to the Yuan meteor stone. Leave that demonic beast to me. This Yuan meteor stone is yours. Chapter 613. Qin Wentian glanced at the young man and instantly knew his cultivation base. He was at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper, and there was a hint of arrogance in the center of his brows. Behind him, there was a maiden clad in a purplish-red dress that accentuated her figure to perfection. Her long hair was tied up in a bun, and the excess strands of her hair cascaded downwards, revealing her fair neck. Her skin was as smooth as water, and she exuded a sense of nobility and elegance. The eyes of this maiden gleamed with a bright light as she stared at Little Rascal, who was in the form of a white tiger. Everyone understood that this young man wanted this demonic beast because he wanted to gain the favor of this maiden. Sorry, I don't wish to trade yet. Qin Wentian waved his hands as the Yuan meteor stone flew back to the young man. The young man frowned as an expression of unhappiness appeared on his face. However, it only lasted for an instant before he relaxed and turned to Qin Wentian. I'm Rong Yan from the Divine Weapon Academy, and this is my junior apprentice sister, Shan Jing. She likes this demonic beast a lot, and since you don't like it, why don't you give it to me? If you don't want enough Yuan meteor stones, feel free to ask. So it's someone from the Divine Weapon Academy. They are all rich and overbearing fellows. The people in the surroundings mused in their hearts. The Divine Weapon Academy mainly nurtured Grandmaster weaponsmiths. After graduating from the academy, many of them would become 5th-ranked weaponsmiths, and these people were all extremely wealthy. For those who were proficient in weaponsmithing, there was no one who wasn't wealthy. Divine Weapon Academy. A bright light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. This time around, he came to the sacred royal city with the intention of finding a weaponsmithing place. What he needed now was a huge sum of wealth, and weaponsmithing was undoubtedly the fastest method. Upon seeing the bright light in Qin Wentian's eyes, a hint of disdain flickered in Rong Yan's eyes. Indeed, even in the sacred royal city, the Divine Weapon Academy was extremely famous. Many people would do all they could to befriend these future Grandmaster weaponsmiths. Seems like this young man was no exception. The look in his eyes changed after hearing his identity. My name is Tianwen, a nameless character. I heard that there would be a grand battle between geniuses on the sacred battle platform in the royal sacred region. Hence I traveled a great distance just to spectate. Qin Wentian laughed. Little rascal who was beside him rolled its eyes, silently cursing at how shameless this fellow was. He actually claimed to be a supreme genius? Too shameless. The arranged battle between Qin Wentian and Di Shi has indeed caused quite a commotion. Right now, there are already many people rushing over. I'm sure the battle will be extremely fascinating. Rong Yan nodded, yet his gaze was still fixed on little rascal. Qin Wentian glanced at the little fellow beside him, and a sinister smile flashed across his eyes. The little fellow shuddered at the sight of it. What was this guy thinking? My little demon is disobedient. If Miss Shun likes it, I can let it play with Miss Shun. When Miss Shun is tired of it, you can return it to me. Qin Wentian stared at the two of them as though he was looking at a treasure. Qin Wentian was naturally happy that they were here to deliver a treasure to him. Shun Jing's brows twitched. She could feel that Qin Wentian was scheming something. The look in his eyes made her feel extremely uncomfortable. But at this moment, the body of the little white tiger actually shrunk as it transformed into a beam of light and rushed into her bosom. Xin Jing was startled, staring at the pure and adorable eyes of the little white tiger. A faint feeling of love blossomed in her heart. Beautiful sister. You are so beautiful. Little rascal spoke in a baby-like voice, causing Shun Jing to smile. Beautiful sister, your smile is so beautiful. Little rascal crawled into Shun Jing's bosom, its little paws scratching everywhere. When Qin Wentian saw this scene, his heart was filled with endless sympathy for Shun Jing. He couldn't help but think of the scene where Qing Er carried little rascal with one hand. It seemed like Qing Er knew this bastard very well. Shun Jing had never seen such an adorable little white tiger before. How could she think of anything else? Although there was a strange feeling in front of her chest, looking at the pair of innocent and adorable eyes, she didn't think too much about it. She rubbed little rascal's head and said, "How could there be such a cute little demon? He actually dared to lay his hands on it. Yes, he is so bad. He has no ability, his cultivation is weak, and he even made me starve." Little rascal blinked his eyes as though he was about to cry. Although his tone was still immature, his words were getting clearer and clearer. Shun Jing glanced at Qin Wentian coldly, but coincidentally saw Qin Wentian looking at her. There seemed to be a strange light in his eyes, causing Shun Jing to feel even more unhappy. Was he coveting her again? "Miss Shun, I wish to learn weaponsmithing. I wonder if you can introduce me to you?" Qin Wentian spoke, causing Shun Jing's impression of Qin Wentian to worsen. Rong Yan, who was beside her, arrogantly glanced at Qin Wentian. So it turned out that Qin Wentian had such a motive. He then coldly stated, "I can introduce you to me, but it isn't so simple to become a student of the Divine Weapon Academy. Maybe you can start as an apprentice, I can arrange it for you." The people in the surroundings all had expressions of interest on their faces. Although the students of the Divine Weapon Academy were of high status, the apprentices were merely people who ran errands. Once the students of the Divine Weapon Academy were unhappy, they would be beaten and scolded. This Rong Yan was intentionally suppressing this apprentice. Shun Jing had a satisfied expression on her face when she heard Rong Yan's words, as she calmly stared at Qin Wentian. "Sure, if that's the case, I'll have to thank you." Qin Wentian acted as though he didn't know what the other party was thinking. A smile appeared on his face, yet he was coldly laughing in his heart. Did they really want him to become an apprentice in the Divine Weapon Academy? If he really wanted to forge weapons, these two people in front of him would have to step aside. No worries. At this moment, the disdain in Rong Yan's eyes was unmasked. Someone who was willing to become an apprentice, what capabilities could he have? As for that little demon, as long as his junior apprentice sister Xinjing liked him, why would he still need to return him? However, Rong Yan still had a trace of suspicion towards Qi Er, who was standing behind Qin Wentian. He then asked, "Who is she? Why doesn't she want to show her face to others?" "My younger sister, her body is weak, she wouldn't be able to withstand the cold," Qin Wentian casually replied. Although Rong Yan wouldn't believe him, he couldn't be bothered to question further. "Let's go." Shun Jing walked over. She didn't even glance at Qin Wentian, directly walking past Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian and Qing Er followed behind. As for little rascal, it was currently lying in Shun Jing's embrace, enjoying himself. Qin Wentian felt a sense of guilt. The Divine Weapon Academy exuded a simple and unadorned aura. From the moment they entered, Qin Wentian could already sense the fluctuations of divine inscriptions everywhere. Each and every one of the silvery white pillars exuded a mystical aura, as though they were divine weapons forged from divine inscriptions. Follow me closely. Rongyan walked in front, instructing Qin Wentian. After informing the guards, he could only bring Qin Wentian into the academy. Academies were different from sections. Sects were stricter, while academies were more relaxed. Hence, Rongyan could easily bring Qin Wentian into the academy. Let's go to the weaponsmithing pagoda to take a look. The year-end weaponsmithing examination is coming soon. Everyone should be there, right? Shenjing spoke in a low voice. Rongyan nodded his head and smiled. Given junior sister's talent in weaponsmithing, you should be able to forge a top-grade 4th-rank divine weapon. You definitely won't disappoint, teacher. Shenjing declined to comment. The group of them arrived at the public square. In the center of the public square, there was a weaponsmithing pagoda. The pagoda was separated into tens of levels, and each level had several slots for weaponsmithing. This pagoda was like a divine weapon, exuding a terrifying heat. The entire pagoda is filled with terrifyingly high-temperature flames. There's basically no need to worry about the problem of flames when forging weapons here. As long as one is a weaponsmith, they would be able to directly start the forging process. How unique! Qin Wentian stared at the pagoda. The higher they went, the fewer slots there were. However, the weaponsmiths seemed to be more and more powerful, and many people were looking up to them. Senior brother Wang Yunfei is still as amazing as ever. He can already forge top-grade 4th-rank divine weapons. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation base is restricted, he might even have a chance to forge 5th-rank divine weapons. In the future, he would definitely become a 5th-ranked weaponsmith grandmaster. Shenjing's gaze landed on the silhouette of a young man at the top of the pagoda, as a hint of admiration flashed in her eyes. In the Heavenly Dipper realm, the person she admired the most in the Divine Weapon Academy was none other than senior brother Wang Yunfei. Not only was his weaponsmithing abilities outstanding, his combat prowess was extremely high as well. He was simply a perfect heaven's chosen. Indeed. Rongyan nodded his head. A trace of jealousy flashed in his heart. However, he couldn't deny how outstanding Qin Wentian was. Junior sister Moon, you are here as well. At this moment, Rongyan noticed a young girl standing beside him, as a radiant smile appeared on his face. This girl had a lackluster countenance, and was clad in simple robes. Although her features were delicate and pretty, when she stood beside Shenjing, she appeared somewhat dim. Shenjing was clad in a purplish-red dress, and the magnificence she exuded caused her to lower her head slightly. Senior brother Rongyan, Moon replied in a low voice. Junior sister, I heard that you don't have an apprentice for weaponsmithing. This is extremely inconvenient. Today I found one for you from outside. I will hand him over to you. Rongyan spoke to Moon as he pointed to Qin Wentian. Moon glanced at Qin Wentian as a gentle smile appeared on her face. She nodded her head. Okay. Thank you, senior brother Rongyan. No worries, you can bring him to your weaponsmithing pavilion. Rongyan smiled. Moon didn't say anything. She turned to Qin Wentian and smiled. My name is Moon. Tianwen. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Tianwen, come with me. Moon brought Qin Wentian away. Qin Wentian saw that Rongyan and Shenjing didn't even glance at him, let alone returning little rascal to him. Tianwen, why did you come here to be an apprentice? It's basically impossible to learn anything from a weaponsmith. It's impossible to hope that a weaponsmith would teach you divine inscriptions. After walking for some distance, Moon stared at Qin Wentian with some worry in her eyes. Also, at your age, if you are just starting out, it's best if you don't learn divine inscriptions. Qin Wentian stared at Moon's eyes. Although Moon wasn't as breathtaking as Shenjing, she was still very delicate and pretty. That pair of spirited eyes exuded a pure sense of beauty. If she changed her clothes and dressed up seriously, she wouldn't lose out to Shenjing by much. Is it very difficult to obtain divine inscriptions here? Qin Wentian asked. He naturally understood the importance of divine inscriptions. Normally speaking, who would teach you the divine inscriptions they were proficient in? The Divine Weapon Academy is only an academy, not your home. let alone a weaponsmith apprentice. Even if you are a student, they wouldn't give you access to all divine inscriptions. Only after you have achieved a certain level of results would they choose to give you access to divine inscriptions. I've been here for almost a year and I still haven't obtained any divine inscriptions that surpassed my own standards. However, if I perform well in the examination this time around, I might have a chance. Moon's eyes gleamed with a bright light. Evidently, she had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Chapter 6:14. Qin Wentian stared at the light in Moon's eyes as he involuntarily laughed. Seems like you are quite confident. Upon hearing his words, Moon's countenance dimmed. She lowered her head as though there was something weighing on her heart as she mumbled, "But I'm afraid I won't be able to obtain a good result. After all, the strength of the divine inscriptions I'm proficient in is limited. Although I've been working hard to raise my proficiency in inscribing divine inscriptions, there's no way for me to make up for the disparity in divine inscriptions. I will definitely be left in the dust by Shunjing and Rong Yan. Can I watch you inscribe divine inscriptions?" Qin Wentian asked, his words causing Moon to smile as she nodded her head. "Sure, if you want to learn my divine inscriptions, I will teach you. As for how much you can learn, that would depend on your own comprehension. Also, is she here to learn weaponsmithing as well?" Moon pointed to Qing as she asked. "She's my younger sister, little Qing. She came here together with me." Qin Wentian smiled. As the two of them spoke, they had already arrived at Moon's weaponsmithing pavilion. Although the place wasn't too big, it had all the necessary materials and there was even heat from the ground. This caused Moon to have an apologetic look on her face as she smiled at Qin Wentian. "I've only been in the academy for a year, hence the conditions of my weaponsmithing pavilion are the worst. That Rong Yan seems to be up to no good. His and Shunjing's weaponsmithing pavilion is better than mine, yet he arranged for you to learn from me. I feel that it's pretty good. If I learn from them, they would definitely not teach me divine inscriptions." Qin Wentian smiled radiantly. Staring at his smile, Moon also smiled. "Your smile is so beautiful and your demeanor isn't bad either. I really don't understand why you want to be a weaponsmithing attendant." As she spoke, she had already started to prepare the materials needed for forging a 4th-rank divine weapon. Forging a 4th-rank divine weapon wasn't the same as forging a 1st-ranked or 2nd-ranked divine weapon. The requirements for the quality of the materials used were extremely strict. If not, even if ordinary divine weapons were imbued with powerful divine imprints, if the materials used weren't sturdy enough when clashing, they would be at a disadvantage and could easily break apart due to instability. The temperature of the flames needed to smelt high-grade crafting materials is extremely high. Fortunately, there is a heavenly flame below the crafting pavilion, which shrouds the entire crafting pavilion area of the academy. Even 5th-grade crafting materials can be smelted, let alone 4th-grade materials. Moon spoke to Qin Wentian, after which, she placed all the materials she had prepared into the central cauldron and began to burn them. At the same time, she turned to Qin Wentian and said, "Help me retrieve the embryonic form of the axe. You want to forge a divine great axe?" Qin Wentian laughed. Weaponsmithing was the same as the martial path, there were countless variations. Similarly, one had to gather materials, heat it, cast it, inscribe divine inscriptions, and finally sharpen it into a divine weapon. For a high-grade divine weapon, the requirements for the materials, combination, and divine inscriptions were all much higher. There couldn't be a single mistake or it would be easy to end up with a defective weapon. You should already know these basic steps, right? Both the materials and forging process, practice makes perfect. After thousands and thousands of tempering, in addition to your powerful perception, you would be able to gradually perfect your weapon. The most important step is the inscribing of divine inscriptions. That is the step that determines the level of a weaponsmith's ability. Moon slowly explained. She continued to forge while chatting with Qin Wentian, guiding Qin Wentian on how to forge weapons. Qin Wentian stared at the beads of sweat on Moon's forehead as a smile appeared on his face. Shunjing and Rong Yan had sent him to Moon's place, causing him to feel extremely happy. Moon was indeed more suitable to help him. After a period of time, the smelted materials were infused into the embryonic form of the great axe, allowing it to solidify before placing the embryonic form onto the forging stone. Moon then slammed her palm onto the embryonic form of the great axe, causing it to shatter, revealing an axe head that was scorched red. I'm going to inscribe divine inscriptions, watch carefully. A bright light flashed as a hatchet appeared in Moon's hands. One of her astral souls was a great axe, a forging-type astral soul. After which, the hatchet in Moon's hands chopped out, slamming onto the hatchet on the forging platform. Instantly, numerous runic inscriptions appeared, faintly exuding the will of the hatchet. Moon was extremely careful in her inscribing. She didn't even bother to chat with Qin Wentian. She was completely focused and used a total of 4 hours before she finished inscribing the divine inscriptions. Moon, your foundations in weaponsmithing are truly solid. Not only that, your inscribing ability is also very powerful. If there's a great teacher around, you would definitely have a bright future ahead of you. Qin Wentian spoke. Moon smiled sweetly, her face was covered in sweat. How can it be as simple as you think? The majority of powerful weaponsmiths are extremely arrogant, and the divine weapons I forge aren't of a high grade. It's very hard for me to attract the attention of others. Could it be that I can summon a Grandmaster level character to observe me forging? I can only wait and see if anyone would pay attention to me during the year-end examinations. Although there won't be any powerful Grandmaster level characters, there might be some weaponsmiths with good foresight. Qin Wentian shrugged. Do you mind if I use this hatchet? Moon blinked, glancing at the hatchet again. A mid-grade, 4th rank divine weapon. Although it's a pity you can do it. Okay. Qin Wentian nodded. After which, he walked forward as a hammer appeared in his hand, directly smashing down on the hatchet. The sound of metal colliding rang out as the divine inscriptions on the hatchet were directly flattened. This caused Moon to be stunned as she stared resentfully at Qin Wentian. Although it was only a mid-grade divine weapon, she was extremely poor and didn't have many materials to forge it. How could she bear to waste it like this? However, she could only hope that after Qin Wentian messed around once, he would understand the difficulty of weaponsmithing. Ding! Another light sound rang out as the hammerhead smashed into the hatchet. A resplendent light flashed as the hatchet exuded a terrifying sharpness. On the surface of the hatchet, an incomparably complex and exquisite divine inscriptions could be seen. This scene caused Moon to be dumbfounded. Her small hands covered her mouth as she stared at Qin Wentian. Her beautiful eyes didn't move as her brain short-circuited. This weaponsmithing technique caused her heart to pound unceasingly. Moon pointed at Qin Wentian. Upon seeing the mischievous smile in Qin Wentian's eyes, she suppressed her shock and pouted. You are so powerful, yet you still dare to tease me? Moon, can you help me with something? Qin Wentian spoke. Seeing the serious look on his face, Moon bewilderedly asked, Your weaponsmithing abilities are so high, what can I help you with? Although my divine inscriptions are powerful, I don't have much research on weaponsmithing. Right now I need a large number of divine weapons, but I can't find a suitable place to do so. I hope you can help me. Qin Wentian spoke. Moon blinked before she nodded, sure. Being able to forge weapons together with such a powerful weaponsmith, how could Moon reject? Okay then. Moon, refine all the materials that can be used to forge divine weapons. I will forge them into divine weapons, and after that, you can go outside to help me trade for more materials, repeating the cycle. At the same time, remember to prepare more weapon embryos. Qin Wentian spoke. Moon instantly understood what Qin Wentian wanted to do. Given Qin Wentian's inscription speed, as long as the other steps and materials were sufficient, he would be able to forge a large number of weapons. And since he came to the Divine Weapon Academy, it was naturally because he knew that the Divine Weapon Academy had its own trading network that could provide all these for him. Weaponsmiths are all wealthy. For a weaponsmith like you, the amount of wealth you can create is simply unimaginable. Moon mumbled, her words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to flicker. He smiled. Right now it's precisely because I'm poor that I need to forge weapons. Other than divine weapons, I also need to trade for some useful items. That's why I thought of this method. Fine, you will only be poor for a period of time. Given your standard, as long as you step into the celestial phenomenon realm, it wouldn't be too much of a problem for you to forge 5th rank divine weapons. Moon felt somewhat jealous of this fellow in front of her. He was simply too powerful. As for why he couldn't forge 5th rank divine weapons, It was most probably due to the limitations of his cultivation base. After all, the majority of 5th-rank divine inscriptions contained a true intent within them. Unless one was at the celestial phenomenon realm, it would be impossible for them to inscribe 5th-rank divine inscriptions. Moon, your foundation is so solid. You will also become a powerful weaponsmith in the future. Qin Wentian laughed. Moon shook her head. How can I be as impressive as you? You still have me. Qin Wentian winked at Moon, causing Moon's expression to stiffen. Her gaze towards Qin Wentian contained traces of nervousness and anticipation as her heart pounded wildly. I'll help you prepare the forging materials. Moon blushed. She didn't dare to meet Qin Wentian's gaze. After which, she walked away to prepare the forging materials for Qin Wentian. The two of them began to forge weapons in the weaponsmith pavilion, and after they were done, Moon would bring the divine weapons forged by Qin Wentian outside to trade. At the same time, she would borrow weapon embryos from her fellow apprentice brothers and sisters in the academy. This caused many to feel puzzled. What happened to Moon recently? She borrowed over 100 weapon embryos within 2 days. During these 2 days, Moon was completely exhausted. Other than running errands for Qin Wentian taught her peak-tier 4th-rank divine inscriptions, as well as the method to inscribe divine inscriptions. Other than helping Qin Wentian, she would also mingle around in the weaponsmith pavilion to learn and attempt to inscribe divine inscriptions. Just like what Qin Wentian had expected, Moon's foundation was extremely solid. With his help, her improvement would be extremely quick. It wouldn't be long before she would be able to inscribe a peak-tier 4th-rank divine weapon. However, although she was tired, Moon had never been so happy before. Now that she had a peak-tier divine inscription, the method to forge weapons was even better, and Qin Wentian had given her a lot of materials, all of which could be used to forge peak-tier 4th-rank divine weapons. Occasionally, when she rested during the night, a smile would appear on Moon's face. Her hard work had finally paid off. She had met such a good person. Although he wanted her help, what Qin Wentian had given her wasn't something that could be compared to this little bit of help. She naturally understood this point in her heart. Towards Qin Wentian, she only felt heartfelt gratitude. 5 days later, Moon once again went out to help Qin Wentian exchange materials. When she passed by the weaponsmithing pagoda, she met Shenjing and Rong Yan. Little Rascal was still as carefree and happy as ever, lying in Shenjing's embrace. Rong Yan glanced at Moon as he smiled. Junior sister, is that apprentice weaponsmith obedient? Moon's face flashed with a bright light as she nodded. Junior sister, if you don't like him, you can just tell him to scram. I'm not that familiar with him anyway. Rong Yan's lips curled up in contempt. As for Little Rascal, it was already impossible for him to return to Shenjing. Even Little Rascal himself couldn't bear to leave, right? Moon coldly glanced at Rong Yan. She didn't say anything and directly walked away. Rong Yan started. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he stared at her departing back. This yes-man actually dared to look at him in such a manner? However, the current Moon gave him a strange feeling. Her demeanor and confidence seemed to have increased, and she was even more beautiful than before. Moon returned to the weaponsmithing pavilion, and saw that Qin Wentian was still forging weapons. She took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat off his forehead, only to see Qin Wentian smiling at her. Moon blushed as she retracted her hand. I don't have any other intentions. Qin Wentian casually smiled. Staring at the smile in his deep eyes, Moon involuntarily felt a sense of inferiority. Although they had only been in contact for 5 days, she could sense that Qin Wentian was definitely an extraordinary character. If not, how could he have such powerful weaponsmithing techniques and such magnanimity? Even if he liked women, they would surely be those that were as dazzling as phoenixes, right? When she thought of this, Moon put down her previous thoughts and didn't think too much about it. She didn't dare to think too much about it either. She could only innocently smile. Tianwen, the year-end examination will begin in a few days. Can you watch me finish the examination before you leave? Qin Wentian glanced at Moon. He originally planned to leave tomorrow, but when he saw the innocent look in her eyes, he smiled and nodded his head. Sure. Thank you. Moon was somewhat agitated, as though she suddenly thought of something. She then continued, after the year-end examination ends, the battle on the sacred battle platform will begin soon. I heard that senior brother Wang Yunfei also wishes to fight against Qin Wentian. Senior brother Wang is so powerful. I wonder what kind of heaven-chosen Qin Wentian is? Is he as outstanding as senior brother Wang Yunfei? Regardless of weapon forging or combat, senior brother Wang Yunfei is so dazzling. Chapter 6:15. A strange smile involuntarily appeared on Qin Wentian's face when he heard Moon mentioning him. After which Moon smiled at him. What about you? You are so proficient in weaponsmithing. How's your combat prowess? This time around, many supreme geniuses will be participating in the sacred battle platform. Will you be going? Maybe, Qin Wentian shrugged and smiled, but before that I still have to make a trip to the Flying Immortal Tower. What do you want exactly? Why are you preparing so many top-tier 4th-rank divine weapons? Moon blinked. A few days ago, Qin Wentian asked her where he could trade for treasures in the sacred royal city. She told Qin Wentian the Flying Immortal Tower. The sacred royal city was the largest transaction ground in the royal sacred region. Not only that, there weren't just a single trading power, there were many of them. The Flying Immortal Tower was one of them. The mysterious Flying Immortal Tower had an incomparably deep foundation. As long as you could pay a sufficient price, the Flying Immortal Tower would be able to take out the item you wanted. Sky Demon Oracle Bone. Qin Wentian laughed in self-mockery. Moon's body trembled slightly as she stared at Qin Wentian in disbelief. If it was an ordinary person, they might not have heard of this item before. But as a weaponsmith, how could she not know about this legendary item? It was rumored that the Sky Demon Oracle Bone could be used to forge Fiend God armors. It was a supreme treasure used to forge armors or defensive divine weapons. Even if you have many divine weapons, it's impossible for you to obtain the Sky Demon Oracle Bone. Moon spoke in a low voice. So what I want now is just some powder of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone. Qin Wentian shook his head with a bitter smile on his face. The Sky Demon Oracle Bone was a must-have item for cultivating the Fiend God Body Refinement Art. If he wanted to establish his Fiend God Body Refinement Art, he had to obtain this item first. I really don't know what you want to do. Moon's lips twitched. When are you going to the Flying Immortal Tower? I'll accompany you. No need, I can go there myself. You still have to prepare for the year-end examination. Qin Wentian smiled. Moon didn't insist and lightly nodded her head. The largest transaction center of the Royal Sacred Region was located in the Sacred Royal City, occupying an area of 1,000 miles. There were countless people coming and going, and celestial phenomenon ascendants could be seen everywhere. However, as the most mysterious and profound Flying Immortal Tower, there were not many people in this area. This was because the trading rules here were different from other places. Ordinary people preferred to go to the auction area or the trading area to try their luck, but the Flying Immortal Tower had its own independent trading rules. The Flying Immortal Inn was just a building. There were many pavilions on the left and right sides of the building, and there were many people stationed there. At this moment, a group of young men appeared below the Flying Immortal Inn. One of them waved his hand as a treasure flew into the inn. At the same time he spoke, I want to exchange for a pair of spears. They must be at the peak of the 4th level, and it would be best if the spears are inscribed with both offensive and defensive divine weapons. Alright, come one day later. A voice rang out from within the Flying Immortal Tower. The transaction was completed. Following that, the second person threw a treasure into the ascending Immortal Tower. He wanted to exchange it for a rare top-grade Tier 4 pill. These people seemed to be from the Cold Slaughter sect. Someone in the surroundings murmured when he saw the group of youths. The person who wants to exchange for the spears is Shui Yunfan from the Cold Slaughter sect. He's extremely powerful and is a heaven chosen with some fame. Someone stated, there were countless geniuses in the sacred royal city, and it was unknown how many heroes were gathered here. Hence, there were some geniuses who had extraordinary strength, but they were still unknown to the public. Not far away, a group of figures could be seen walking over, exuding an extraordinary aura. Why is Wang Yunfei here as well? I heard that he planned to go to the sacred battle platform to join in the fun. I wonder how his preparations are going. Upon seeing the young man in the lead, the gazes of the crowd froze. Wang Yunfei's fame wasn't small. Not only was his talent in the martial Dao high, His proficiency in weaponsmithing was also outstanding. Not far away from Wang Yunfei, there was another ordinary-looking man. This man looked extremely ordinary, and because of the conical bamboo hat he wore, his countenance couldn't be seen clearly. However, his eyes underneath the bamboo hat gleamed with sharpness. This man was none other than Qin Wentian. He had met Wang Yunfei once before, and was somewhat bewildered when he saw Wang Yunfei walking in front. However, he didn't think too much about it and continued walking forward. Not long after, Wang Yunfei's group arrived at the Flying Immortal Tower. Shui Yunfan smiled at him. Wang Yunfei, you actually have something you lack? Who didn't know that weaponsmiths were wealthy? Wang Yunfei's proficiency in weaponsmithing was extraordinary. He definitely wouldn't lack ordinary treasures. Wang Yunfei faintly glanced at Shui Yunfan before shifting his gaze onto the Flying Immortal Tower. After which, he waved his hands as over 10 divine weapons flew out, landing on the Flying Immortal Tower. The divine weapons hummed as they shone resplendently, causing many to be startled. Wang Yunfei's actions were truly extraordinary. Change all of them to Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. Wang Yunfei spoke. Come back 3 days later. A voice rang out from the Flying Immortal Tower. Wang Yunfei nodded. It wasn't strange for there to be Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder here. What armor do you want to forge? You actually need Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder? An expression of interest appeared on Shui Yunfan's face as he stared at Wang Yunfei. Qin Wentian, who was walking behind him, also had a strange expression on his face. He didn't expect that Wang Yunfei wanted the same thing as him. However, Wang Yunfei wanted to forge a weapon. Qin Wentian walked up and waved his hands. In an instant, terrifying whistling sounds rang out as numerous divine weapons gleamed with a dazzling light. These divine weapons were arranged in rows, causing the eyes of everyone to feel pain. The hearts of the people in the surroundings couldn't help but to tremble as they stared at the figure in the bamboo hat. Wasn't the actions of this man a little too tyrannical? Change all of them to Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. Qin Wentian's low voice rang out. The Flying Immortal Tower fell silent for a moment. At the same time, Qin Wentian could clearly sense an extremely tyrannical perception sweeping past him. It should be a celestial phenomenon ascendant. They naturally had to clearly sense the appearance and aura of the person making the transaction so that they wouldn't be falsely claimed by someone else when they came back next time. Please wait a moment. A voice rang out. It was as though there was no way to ascertain if they had enough Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. At this moment, Wang Yunfei stared at Qin Wentian, his eyes gleaming with sharpness as he asked, Sir, why do you need so much Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder? Qin Wentian glanced at Wang Yunfei. He didn't reply. Wang Yunfei had no way to ascertain who Qin Wentian was, and he didn't dare to be too impudent. Seeing that Qin Wentian didn't reply, he didn't continue speaking. He was thinking in his heart, who would be able to take out so many divine weapons? Also, this person should only be a heavenly dipper sovereign. Come back 3 days later. An instant later, a voice rang out from the Flying Immortal Tower. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he turned and departed. However, he didn't leave this transaction ground. Instead, he chose to roam around, searching for other items he needed to trade. After all, he had enough divine weapons on him to trade. A few hours later, Qin Wentian returned to the Divine Weapon Academy. He continued forging weapons while at the same time guiding Moon. Although he didn't have a use for so many divine weapons, he could use them to exchange for yuan meteor stones or other treasures. Who would dislike having too many? 3 days later, when Qin Wentian came back to collect the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, he discovered that Wang Yunfei and Shui Yunfan, whom he met before, were both here. When they saw him, their gazes turned to him as though they were waiting for him. This caused the eyes of Qin Wentian to gleam with sharpness. I'm here to collect the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder. Qin Wentian spoke. Yes. A voice rang out from the Flying Immortal Tower. Qin Wentian slowly walked towards the window. After that, that person passed an interspatial ring to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian received it and inspected it, cursing silently in his heart. Wasn't the price of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder a little too high? There was actually so little of it. You can also come and collect it, but the price might be slightly lower. The Flying Immortal Tower will return a few divine weapons to you. A voice spoke to Wang Yunfei, causing Wang Yunfei's countenance to turn incredibly unsightly. The rules of the Flying Immortal Tower were like this. Usually, as long as you agreed, you would get the items you wanted. But if there was someone else who had even better items to exchange for the items, the Flying Immortal Tower would give priority to that person. If the items you offered were insufficient, the Flying Immortal Tower would return the items you offered. Back then, the number of divine weapons Qin Wentian took out was too much, hence he was given priority over Wang Yunfei. Wait a minute. Just when Qin Wentian wanted to leave, Wang Yunfei, who was the owner of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, called out to him. Qin Wentian halted his steps only to hear Wang Yunfei speaking. I'll pay double the price in exchange with you. How about it? Not exchanging. Qin Wentian faintly spoke as he lifted his foot and departed. A person beside Shui Yunfan had a sharp look in his eyes. He spoke to Shui Yunfan. This man's cultivation base is at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. A cold light flashed in Shui Yunfan's eyes as he laughed. Brother Wang, did you hear that? Wang Yunfei swept his gaze over to Shui Yunfan and the others. There were quite a few experts here. He instantly knew what they wanted to do. He coldly snorted. How could he allow himself to be used by Shui Yunfan? Their target was clearly Qin Wentian. They even brought people who could probe his cultivation base. Although he didn't care about Shui Yunfan, he wouldn't be so foolish as to help Shui Yunfan probe his cultivation base. And as expected, seeing that Wang Yunfei didn't move, Shui Yunfan and the others stepped out, directly surrounding Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian initially wanted to leave after obtaining the item. After all, according to the rules of the Flying Immortal Tower, as long as you obtained the item, you would no longer have anything to do with the Flying Immortal Tower. Right now, he was locked onto by Shui Yunfan and the others. With a sweep of his perception, he was able to determine the cultivation bases of his opponents. There were 5 to 6 8th level Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns and 3 9th level Heavenly Dipper Sovereigns. Such a lineup was truly well prepared. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows as he coldly spoke. What do you guys want? Leave that interspatial ring behind. Shui Yunfan coldly spoke. He had personally seen Qin Wentian using so many divine weapons to exchange for it. The value of that interspatial ring was equivalent to over 100 top-grade 4th-rank divine weapons. And for him, Shui Yunfan, he had only obtained a single top-grade 4th-rank divine weapon 2 days ago. I can't do it. Qin Wentian faintly spoke, yet a terrifying aura gushed forth from Shui Yunfan. He stared at Qin Wentian with disdain as killing intent flashed in his eyes. Why must you do this? Killing intent flashed in Shui Yunfan's eyes. In the sacred royal city, there weren't many who would dare to openly rob others. After all, those who dared to come here for a transaction all had their own capabilities. Qin Wentian's identity was unknown. If it wasn't for the fact that the items on him were too valuable, the people from the Cold Slaughter sect wouldn't have dared to take such a risk. Abruptly, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he soared up into the air. Shui Yunfan's countenance drastically changed as he blasted out with both his spears, akin to dragons of rage howling as a fearsome killing intent gushed forth. Qin Wentian pointed his finger in the air as a formless sword intent enveloped the entire space, terrifying to the extreme. In that instant, Shui Yunfan's entire body trembled. He felt as though he was in the midst of a terrifying killing intent. He involuntarily stared at Qin Wentian with trepidation in his eyes. Die! Qin Wentian's finger landed as a piercing sound rang out. Shui Yunfan's entire body was pierced through by a sharp sword as blood flowed from the center of his brows. His eyes were wide open as he died with everlasting regret. Chapter 6:16. Right now, the heaven-breaking finger was unleashed by Qin Wentian's will at the perfection boundary of the Tao of Swords, in addition to his own comprehension of the Tao of Swords. How terrifying was the might of this finger! Shui Yunfan, who was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, was instantly killed. In that instant, those experts from the Cold Slaughter sect who were exuding tyrannical auras were all stunned. They stared at Qin Wentian with killing intent flickering in their eyes. This man was indeed at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, yet his combat prowess was actually so tyrannical. That finger strike of his was so tyrannical that it was completely unreasonable, instantly killing Shui Yunfan. Such a domineering aura caused the experts from the Cold Slaughter sect to pause momentarily. They were all invited here by Shui Yunfan, and a heavenly dipper sovereign who possessed hundreds of top-tier fourth-rank divine weapons. It was extremely difficult for them to not be moved. However, this man didn't seem to be a pushover. I have no intention of killing anyone. If you don't want to die, don't antagonize me. Qin Wentian spoke. He wore the bamboo hat so that he wouldn't attract attention. Since Shui Yunfan dared to rob the divine weapons, he would kill him first to deter the others. If these people were stubborn, he could only kill them. As the sound of his voice faded, Qin Wentian turned and departed. His steps were light and agile. His face hidden under the bamboo hat couldn't be seen. The spectators in the surroundings all stared at the scene that just happened, after which, they turned their gazes onto the experts from the Cold Slaughter sect. There were so many of them, yet they were all intimidated by a mere 7th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereign. What should we do? An expert from the Cold Slaughter sect asked. Forget it, since this man is so confident he must be someone extraordinary. That divine weapon is a hot potato. A 9th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereign replied. An expert at the side narrowed his eyes as he stared at the disappearing silhouette of Qin Wentian. What a pity. Although Qin Wentian had killed Shui Yunfan in a single strike, they didn't think that Qin Wentian would be able to fight against so many of them. They were only worried that Qin Wentian would dare to come to the Flying Immortal Tower to conduct a transaction in front of so many people. Furthermore, killing Shui Yunfan was a decisive and ruthless move. It was better not to take any risks. In a city like the Saint Royal City, being cautious was the #1 rule of survival. Wang Yunfei cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian, but he didn't have any thoughts of snatching it away. He was only thinking in his heart that only a small amount of the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder was needed to forge a supremely powerful defensive divine weapon, yet this person wanted too much. Could it be that he wanted to forge a defensive divine weapon in batches? Qin Wentian naturally didn't want to forge a defensive divine weapon. If he succeeded in cultivating the Fiend God Body Refinement realm, his physique would be even more terrifying than divine weapons. After returning to the resting area that Moon had arranged for him, Qin Wentian closed his eyes as his entire body shone with a dazzling astral light. He executed the incantation and stretched his palms out, grabbing onto the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder, after which his palms transformed into a fearsome vortex, directly absorbing the Sky Demon Oracle Bone Powder into his body. An intense pain gushed forth from his arms. Qin Wentian gritted his teeth and endured it. This was only the entry level of this incantation. In the future, this incantation would be even more tyrannical. The Sky Demon Oracle Bone was rumored to be a supreme defensive divine weapon. Even its powder could be used to forge a supremely powerful defensive divine weapon. One could very well imagine how tough it was. However, Qin Wentian actually wanted to use his flesh and blood to refine it into his body. From this, one could very well imagine how tyrannical it was. Qin Wentian was busy with his cultivation, while the people of the Divine Weapon Academy were busy with the forging of divine weapons. During these few days, Moon immersed herself in the forging of divine weapons, doing her best to digest everything Qin Wentian taught her. She was doing her best to prepare for the year-end examinations. Unknowingly, the year-end examinations of the Divine Weapon Academy had finally arrived. Today, the atmosphere of the Divine Weapon Academy was extremely lively. In the public square of the Divine Weapon Academy, the surroundings of the weaponsmithing pagoda were filled with students. Above the public square, there was a spectator stand where the elders of the academy sat, observing the year-end examinations of the students. Qin Wentian, Qing'er and Moon were preparing to set off. Moon smiled at Qin Wentian. Thank you for watching me participate in the year-end examinations. It's not like I'm busy. Qin Wentian shrugged. Future Grandmaster Weaponsmith, in the future if I need help with anything, don't reject me. Naturally, as long as you need my help, I can continue forging weapons for you without any compensation. Moon smiled sweetly. The her now was indeed more confident. Even her demeanor was different from before. Qin Wentian propped up his chin as he stared at Moon, causing her to avert her gaze. However, Qin Wentian only smiled. Moon, I discovered that you are truly very beautiful. If you dress yourself up, you might even look prettier compared to Shenjing. Moon blushed as she replied, Shenjing is so elegant, how can I be compared to her? She is elegant, You are pure and innocent. It's just that I thought you needed to dress yourself up properly. That way, coupled with your proficiency in weaponsmithing, you would be like a crane in a flock of chickens. Qin Wentian spoke. Do you really think so? Moon's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian naturally nodded his head. In that case, wait for me. Moon smiled sweetly as she ran towards her room. Qin Wentian waited for an entire hour before Moon walked out with her head lowered. Qin Wentian stared at Moon in bewilderment. Right now, she was no longer wearing that simple and unadorned robe, and had changed into a pure white dress. Her fair neck and exquisite collarbones were revealed, and her jet-black hair flowed gracefully in front of her collarbones, exuding a sense of spirituality and purity. Moon shyly inclined her head, and upon seeing Qin Wentian staring at her, her face grew even redder. However, she soon heard Qin Wentian laughing. Seems like my judgment isn't bad. If you walk out like this, in addition to your proficiency in weaponsmithing, you will definitely become an influential character in this examination. Let's go. Moon nodded her head, and walked out together with Qin Wentian. When they arrived at the public square of the Divine Weapon Academy, several gazes instantly landed on Moon, causing the expressions on the faces of many to turn extremely fascinating. Is that Moon? Someone asked in disbelief. Be more confident. Qin Wentian laughed in a low voice when he saw that Moon was feeling a little awkward. Moon nodded her head and inclined her head as she walked forward gracefully. Her ample bosom seemed to be on the verge of bursting out, causing the eyes of many male students to flash with a strange light. Moon! A shocked voice rang out. Rong Yen stared at Moon and Qin Wentian as a look of bewilderment flashed in his eyes. A few days ago, he already felt that Moon seemed to have changed, but he didn't expect that the cowardly and low-profile Moon would actually become so outstanding. He didn't even dare to believe his own eyes. Moon nodded lightly to Rong Yen before shifting her gaze onto the weaponsmithing pagoda. She didn't have a favorable impression of Rong Yen. Moon, why are you so late? The examination has already started, and there are already many people forging weapons in the pagoda. Rong Yen walked towards Moon as he smiled. This scene caused Shun Jing, who was originally standing beside him, to frown as a look of unhappiness flashed in her eyes. Don't worry, today is the day of the examination. Moon replied in a light voice. The examination at the end of the year was actually a chance for the students of the Divine Weapon Academy to display themselves. All fourth-ranked inscriptionists had the opportunity to go up and forge weapons. There would be people in the academy who would record your proficiency in weaponsmithing and decide how much resources you would be given. In addition, some of the more outstanding ones would even be taken in as disciples by the elders of the academy. Moon, your proficiency in weaponsmithing is also not bad. Let's wait for the next batch. I heard that Wang Yunfei is preparing to go up. Moon didn't reply to the sudden change in Rong Yan's attitude, but Qin Wentian laughed. Moon, I feel the same way as well. Moon glanced at Qin Wentian, understanding that he wanted her to attract the attention of more people. After all, there would be many elders paying attention to Wang Yunfei's weaponsmithing. Being in the same batch as Qin Wentian would also attract a lot of attention. Okay. Moon smiled at Qin Wentian, causing Rong Yen, who was at the side, to be in a daze. He involuntarily glanced at Qin Wentian as his countenance turned much colder. Moon, is this apprentice I gifted to you obedient? An unhappy expression flashed on Moon's face. She coldly glanced at Rong Yen. Rong Yen, have you always been so disrespectful? Before this, Rong Yan's tone when he spoke to her had always been arrogant and cold. But right now, his tone clearly contained the intent to humiliate Qin Wentian. What did he mean by the apprentice he gifted to her? Was Qin Wentian an object? Rong Yen frowned when he saw the cold look in Moon's eyes. Being questioned like this, his countenance naturally turned incredibly ugly. In addition, what sort of character was he, Rong Yen? He had always been extremely arrogant. Now that he treated Moon with respect, Moon actually berated him for the sake of Qin Wentian? Seeking trouble for yourself. A mocking voice drifted over. Shun Jing turned her gaze over, sweeping a glance at Rong Yen before turning to Moon. Do you really think you can transform into a phoenix just by dressing up a little? Given your level of weaponsmithing, it's best if you don't embarrass yourself. Qin Wentian calmly glanced at Shun Jing before turning to Little Rascal in her arms. Isn't it about time to return that little fellow to me? Shen Jing stared at Qin Wentian in bewilderment. A mocking look could be seen in her eyes. She gently stroked little rascal's snow-white skin as she mocked. A person like you isn't worthy of it. Why don't you ask it if it's willing to follow you? Qin Wentian laughed, glaring at little rascal. Why are you still not coming back? Little rascal popped its head out and with a ferocious leap, pounced onto Qin Wentian. Shen Jing's countenance turned cold as she coldly spoke. Return it to me. Qin Wentian ignored her. Rong Yen stared at Qin Wentian as a look of disdain flickered in his eyes. I want you to hand it over. Scram. Qin Wentian glanced at Rong Yen as a cold light flickered in his eyes, causing Rong Yan's heart to tremble violently. He stared at Qin Wentian. This place is the Divine Weapon Academy. The one who should scram is you. That's right, scram. Shen Jing similarly walked up, staring at Qin Wentian. She didn't expect that she would be betrayed by that little fellow. I will leave after this round of the weaponsmithing competition ends. Qin Wentian faintly spoke. Upon hearing his words, Moon coldly stared at Rong Yen and Shen Jing. Qin Wentian stayed behind because he wanted to watch her take the test. Yet now he was being expelled. At this moment, a series of exclamations rang out. So it turned out that this round had ended. Wang Feiyun slowly walked up, arriving at the top of the pagoda, causing the crowd to exclaim in shock. Give me a little more time. Moon stared at Qin Wentian with an apologetic look in her eyes. After which, her silhouette flickered as she flew towards the top of the pagoda. This time around, the low-profile Moon actually directly ascended to the top of the pagoda, appearing beside Wang Yunfei. This scene caused many to furrow their brows. Didn't this Moon have too little self-awareness? However, at this moment, Moon's long dress fluttered in the wind, exuding an extraordinary aura. Her gaze turned over, staring at Rong Yen and Shen Jing below as she icily spoke. Rong Yen, Shen Jing, you two have insulted my friends. For the weaponsmithing examination this time around, let us compete. If my Moon's proficiency in weaponsmithing is inferior to yours, I will vanish from the Divine Weapon Academy. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.